Hey, tonight we're going to talk about why medieval hygiene was frankly absolutely disgusting. You think your commute was bad? Imagine trudging through a street where the gutter is the toilet, the tanner is boiling urine next door, and the air is so foul even the plague says, "I'm good." This isn't the medieval fantasy of shimmering nights and courtly love. Tonight, we're going to wander real alleys slick with offal, step carefully around chamber pot surprises, and peek into bathhouses that were, let's say, multi-purpose. We'll talk about how a medieval barber might pull your tooth, lance your boil, and give you a haircut with the same rusty blade. We'll look at monks who carefully swept their cloisters while sewage drained into the river they drank from. You'll get to experience the Parisian ordinance about not throwing human waste out the window, mostly ignored. Along the way, we'll pay a visit to the wonderfully fragrant streets of medieval London, where people navigated open sewers and tried to sweeten the air with herbs stuffed up their noses. We'll meet plague doctors whose iconic beaked masks weren't a costume choice, but an attempt to ward off the evil stench. We'll even drift into royal palaces where courtiers relieved themselves behind a curtain in the same hall as the throne. This isn't to shame them. They did the best they could with what they knew. It's part of why history is so beautifully human, so stubborn, so darkly funny. Tonight we'll wander it all in quiet detail, from the chilly stone walls of a monastery latrine to the putrid hustle of a medieval fish market. So if you're enjoying these bedtime stories about history's weirdest realities, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm always curious where you're listening from. Drop a comment with your city and what time it is there. It honestly blows my mind to see people listening from every corner of the world. Dim the lights. Settle in. Maybe hold your nose for this one. Let's drift back to a time when soap was rare, smells were legendary, and hygiene was more wish than practice. This is boring history for sleep, and tonight we're getting dirty. You stand on a narrow, cobbled street in 14th century London, the air thick with the damp chill of an English morning. It's deceptively quiet at dawn, but even now, you can smell it. The sharp ammonia bite of urine, the sour rot of spoiled meat from yesterday's market stalls, the unmistakable reek of human waste. You watch as a maid leans from a crooked upper-story window and tips the contents of a chamber pot into the street. She shouts the warning, "Gardez l'eau," but it's half-hearted. The splash hits the gutter with a wet slap. You step back instinctively, though in truth, the runoff is everywhere. The gutters lining the road are open sewers carrying a slow, viscous slurry toward the River Thames. It isn't that they didn't care about cleanliness, they just understood it differently. For many, filth was unavoidable, part of God's plan. You hear a local priest warn parishioners that overbathing could weaken the body and invite illness. Better to stay dry and let sin, or lice, work themselves out naturally. A fishmonger arrives to set up his stall, hacking at yesterday's catch with a dull blade on a scarred wooden board. Gulls scream overhead, drawn by the entrails tossed aside. The fish guts join the general muck, trodden underfoot by passers-by. You smell brine and decay in every breath. In theory, London had ordinances against dumping waste in the streets. You see a city official trudging along with a wax tablet, muttering about fines. But the rules are hard to enforce when the city is growing so quickly, the streets so cramped, and night soilmen so few. You move toward a public latrine near the bridge. It's a low, half-timbered shed perched over the river itself, ingeniously designed to let the tide carry everything away. You watch people shuffle in and out, relieved to find a place to go that isn't their own doorstep. But the tide is out, the waste piles on mudflour. Ats below, waiting for the water to return and sweep it to sea. The city smells worse in summer, when heat ripens everything. But even in winter, there's no escape from it. You see people pressing pomanders, little balls of scented herbs, to their noses, desperate for relief. Some wear nosegays on their collars, convinced it will ward off disease. You stand very still, taking it in. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer down the lane, the creak of cart wheels, the hiss of boiling tallow at the candlemaker's shop nearby. Everything has its smell, and all of it mingles into something uniquely medieval. You breathe carefully, because there's nowhere truly clean to go. Not in this city, not in this age. You're standing just inside the stone gate of a medieval monastery. It's quiet here, save for the soft sweep of a monk's broom against cold flagstones. The air smells of damp wool, beeswax and old manuscripts, but it doesn't smell clean. You follow the monk down a long, echoing corridor. He pauses to relight a candle, its wick fizzing faintly. The monastery's latrines, or reredauters as they call them, are located at the far end, built over a small stream. In theory, water carries the waste away. In practice, the flow is sluggish. You enter the reredauter. Rows of stone seats line the walls, separated by wooden dividers. Below is a channel of murky water, barely moving. It smells of mould and worse things. No privacy, no doors. This is communal. Monks come here in silence, even in this act, as humility demands. A bucket of ash sits nearby, an attempt at deodorizing. A wooden ladle rests beside it, used by many, cleaned by few. Hygiene is not ignored here, but it's defined more by spiritual purity than physical. Monks wash their hands and feet regularly, but baths are taken rarely, perhaps once a month. Some think bathing stirs temptation, others fear it opens the pores to disease. You notice a monk scrubbing his robes near a stone trough. The water is brown, lye soap is expensive and harsh. Most use it sparingly. He wrings the cloth out and hangs it near the fire, the air filling with the scent of wet wool and smoke. You wander past the kitchen next. Stews bubble over low flames, and bread bakes in great stone ovens. It smells better here, but you spot rats scurrying near the grain sacks. The cook doesn't react. Pest control isn't much of a science yet. Herbs hang from beams to dry, not just for flavour. Many believe herbs purify the air. Rosemary, lavender, thyme. It helps a little. In the infirmary wing, you see a monk tending a sick brother. He pours a mix of vinegar and herbs over a wound. No gloves, no sterilisation. His hands bear cracks from years of labour. The monastery is orderly, peaceful, even sacred, but it's far from sterile. And when it rains, the latrine overflow backs into the garden. The lettuce doesn't seem to mind. You breathe through your sleeve. The wind stirs faint chants from the chapel. The walls are cold. The stone remembers every season. You stay still a moment longer, wondering how cleanliness became a thing of the soul before it was a thing of the body. You walk through the heart of medieval Paris now, stepping carefully along the Rue Saint-Denis. It's noon, and the streets are crowded. Bakers, beggars, butchers, nobles on horseback, all sharing the same space and the same smell. There are no sewers here, not really. Waste flows in shallow trenches carved into the middle of the street, channeled downward toward the River Seine. When it rains, it rushes. When it doesn't, it festers. A woman tosses grey water from a second-story window. It lands near your feet with a dull splash. She doesn't yell a warning. Few do anymore. The scent is hard to describe. Part manure, part ash, part spoiled wine. It clings to your hair and clothes like fog. You pass a tannery. The smell hits you before you see it. Animal hides soaked in urine and lime, then scraped clean with dull knives. Dogs wander through, nosing the hides. The tanners are barefoot, standing ankle-deep in slurry, working rhythmically. Across the way, a barber surgeon's pole spins gently in the breeze, red and white stripes for blood and bandages. Inside, a man groans while another leans over him with iron tools. Dentistry and surgery are crude, teeth are pulled with pliers, boils are lanced without anaesthesia. You hear a scream. The barber doesn't pause, just another Tuesday. The apothecary next door smells faintly better. Shelves of dried herbs, powdered minerals and mysterious oils. He offers remedies for the plague, for fevers, for heartbreak. None of them work, but the jars look lovely. You wander toward a bathhouse, a rare luxury. Steam spills from its doorway. Inside, men and women bathe together. The water is shared, reused, barely warmed. It's more social club than hygiene ritual. Some bathe weekly, others only for holidays. Soap is expensive and made from animal fat. It leaves a film on the skin. People often scrub with cloths dipped in wine or vinegar instead. The air is warm, fragrant with lavender and musk, but the floor is slick. Lice float on the water's surface. Someone plays a lute near the fire. Others laugh. You realize they aren't trying to be clean, they're trying to feel human. Outside again, the breeze carries the smell of the river, rank and dark. It's where people wash clothes, fetch drinking water, and dump refuse. You look up. The cathedral bells toll softly. You wonder how long it takes to get used to the smell of everything. You're in a small village in northern Germany now, sometime in the early 1300s. It's quiet here compared to the cities. The sky is grey, the fields muddy. You walk past timbered houses, their roofs thatched and crawling with moss. The scent is simpler but no less pungent. Smoke, manure, damp wood. You pass a pigsty. Pigs roam freely through the streets, rooting in garbage heaps. Their snouts caked in filth, their grunts echoing off the low houses. They serve as mobile waste disposal. A woman draws water from a well with a cracked bucket. The well is shallow, the water cloudy. It's not boiled, fuel is too precious. People drink it as it is, trusting in prayer and habit. She empties a chamber pot behind her hut, where a small pit slowly fills with waste. When it overflows, they dig a new one. There's no schedule, no sanitation crew. You visit the town bathhouse, a single smoky room with a wooden tub. Water is heated over a fire, then carried in with buckets. The family bathes in order. Father, mother, children, then guests, if they're lucky. The water darkens with each turn. You lift a ragged cloth and peer into the corners. Fleas cluster in the rushes strewn on the floor. They replace the rushes once a season, maybe. In the local tavern, a jug of ale is passed from hand to hand. People drink ale because it's safer than water. It's weak, sour, and slightly warm, but no one questions it. The healer arrives, smelling of garlic and smoke. She offers charms, boiled roots, and advice from old books. When someone falls ill, they blame bad air, miasma. Some hang bunches of herbs over their doors. Others burn dried dung, hoping the smoke drives sickness away. A boy scratches at his scalp. Lice are common and sometimes welcomed. Proof you're alive, they joke. As night falls, the fires are banked low. The smoke lingers inside, clinging to skin and cloth. The scent of every meal, very sickness, every life lived close to the earth. You lie down on a straw mattress filled with chaff and mites. Someone coughs nearby, a dog sleeps in the doorway. It's not clean, but it's home, and it's been like this for centuries. You now stand outside the walls of Avignon during the height of the 14th century papal court. It is summer. The sun bakes the stone streets, and the odour, already strong, becomes something you can almost taste. Avignon is crowded with clergy, merchants, diplomats, beggars, and all of them sweat. You walk along the papal palace walls, where nobles gather in silks and brocades, trying to look serene despite the heat and the flies. They dab themselves with scented cloths soaked in rosewater. It barely helps. Under the perfume lies the reality, unwashed bodies layered in fabric, weeks between baths. Inside, the papal court is opulent. Marble floors, gilded walls, priceless tapestries. But even here, the latrines are simple stone seats built into the outer walls, discharging directly into the river or moat. You hear a splash below. You try not to imagine the details. Servants move through the halls, burning incense in swinging censers. The smoke curls lazily, mingling with the warm stench of humanity. Doctors in black robes whisper about bad airs. They recommend avoiding certain winds. Some prescribe crushed emeralds. Others suggest bleeding. You step into the chamber of a cardinal. He lounges in scented linens. His physician powders his wig with lead dust and pats his cheeks with ground orris root. Outside the window, peasants dump night soil onto barges. The River Rhone is dark with waste. The same water used for washing clothes, cleaning wounds, and blessing holy items. You follow a group of pilgrims into a bathhouse near the city gates. They soak their feet in warm water while gossiping about indulgences. A boy scratches at a rash. His mother rubs goose fat on it and mutters a prayer. In the market, you watch a vendor sell boiled eels from a greasy cauldron. A dog licks the ladle between customers. No one notices. You realize Avignon is a contradiction, holy and filth, sacred and sour. As night falls, the church bells toll across the city. The breeze shifts, and for a moment the smell lightens. You exhale slowly, almost forgetting where you are, but the next gust reminds you, even the city of God needs a good bath. You stand in a medieval castle's great hall. The fire crackles in an immense stone hearth, casting flickering light over tapestries and shields. The smell here is layered: roasting meat, wet wool cloaks drying by the fire, and something ranker, unwashed bodies. Lords and ladies gather at long trestle tables. You watch a servant spill wine as he hurries. The wine soaks into rushes on the floor, rushes meant to catch crumbs and waste. They're rarely changed. Beneath the fresh layer lies a mulch of old food scraps, animal droppings, and spilled ale, breeding lice and fleas. Dogs wander underfoot, snatching bones. No one minds, they're part of the clean-up crew. You glance at the high table. The nobles pick at trenchers, stale bread used as plates, soaking up greasy stews. When finished, they might give the soggy bread to servants or the poor. Sometimes it just lands in the rushes. The air is smoky. Chimneys are a new idea in many places, so smoke curls along the beams before escaping through slits in the roof. Your eyes water. You're led to the castle's guardrobe, a privy built into the outer wall. It's little more than a stone bench with a hole, positioned so waste drops straight down the wall into the moat below. You lean out carefully. The moat stinks. Moats are supposed to be defensive barriers, but they double as sewers. The stagnant water turns green, buzzing with insects. In summer, the stench is strong enough to make guests gag. In wealthier castles, they try to be cleaner. Servants pour buckets of water to flush waste away. Sometimes they add aromatic herbs, but water doesn't run uphill. The lower levels are always worse. You pass the solar, the family's private chamber. The lord's children sprawl on mattresses stuffed with straw or feathers. The fabric is rarely washed. Lice scuttle in the seams. Nurses comb the children's hair with fine-toothed iron combs, squashing. G knits between fingernails. A maid brings scented pomanders, small perforated metal balls filled with cloves and cinnamon. They don't clean anything, but they help you pretend. You stand by the window slit. Cold air leaks in. You can hear the wind whistle across the battlements. You smell damp stone, wet rushes, and smoke. You wonder if anyone here knows what truly clean feels like. You stay a moment longer, watching the flames dance in the hearth. In the darkness beyond the walls, wolves howl, but inside it's humanity's own grime that dominates the senses. You walk through Florence in the 15th century, the cradle of the Renaissance, where art and filth mingle in equal measure. The narrow streets are crowded with merchants hawking silk, spices and paintings. But between the colour and commerce lies the unshakable stench of life lived too close. You watch a boy empty a slop bucket onto the street. The contents trickle away, joining other runoff in a foul little river winding between cobbles. The authorities have ordinances, fines for dumping waste, but enforcement is spotty. The city grows too fast, and the wealthiest families simply pay their fines like rent on bad behaviour. You pass the butcher's quarter. Animals are slaughtered on open blocks. Blood seeps between stones, congealing in the sun. Offal piles up until it's carted away, sometimes. Stray dogs nose through it, licking bones clean. Nearby, a public fountain trickles clear water from a carved lion's mouth. Women fill jugs and gossip. You see one rinse vegetables in it, but you also see a man wash his hands, caked with who knows what, right next to her. Not far away, a wealthy merchant's house rises in polished stone. Inside it's better, but only in comparison. The floors are swept, the walls whitewashed, but the family still uses chamber pots, emptied into the street or the Arno River. You step inside a small neighbourhood bathhouse. Steam clouds the room. The walls drip. People of all classes soak here. Men in one room, women in another, sometimes both together. It's meant for health and socializing as much as cleaning. The water is changed infrequently. The first bathers get warm, clear water. The last soak in tepid, cloudy stew. Soap is scarce, made from animal fat and ash. Its harshness leaves skin raw. Barber surgeons operate in back rooms. You see one sharpening his blade against a leather strop. He'll shave your beard, pull your tooth, lance your boil, all. In one appointment, you notice herbs hanging from the rafters. Sage, rosemary, lavender. The owner insists they ward off bad airs. Outside, the sun sets over Florence's towers. The light catches the gold of church domes and the grime of crowded alleys alike. You breathe carefully, half imagining you can smell the paint drying in Botticelli's studio mixed with the sewage on the street. It's beautiful and utterly foul. You're in medieval Moscow now, standing by the Kremlin's wooden walls before they became stone. The wind cuts cold through your clothes. It smells of wood smoke, wet fur, and the iron tang of blood from butchered animals. You watch people trudge through mud, churned by ox carts. There's no paving here. The roads become quagmires in rain, dust bowls in summer, frozen ruts in winter. Waste disposal is primitive. Refuse piles along roadsides or is dumped into pits just outside the walls. Pigs root through it. When snow falls, it hides everything for a time, but when it melts, well, the surprise is always unpleasant. Inside peasant huts, the air is thick. Families huddle around central ovens for warmth. Smoke leaks from the thatched roofs because chimneys are rare. Soot coats rafters and lungs alike. You duck inside a hut. It's one room shared with animals in winter. Goats bleat softly in the corner. A cradle hangs from the ceiling beam, swaying with every movement. The floor is hard-packed earth, swept with birch branches. There's no latrine inside. People go outside, even in winter. You shiver at the thought. Baths are taken in the banya, a separate bathhouse, sometimes shared by multiple families. You visit one next. The banya is warm, filled with steam from water thrown on hot stones. People beat themselves with birch twigs to improve circulation. It's cleansing, but not entirely hygienic. Everyone shares the steam. Skin flakes, lice, and sweat fill the air. Afterward, bathers roll in the snow. It feels bracing, almost holy. Back outside, you see merchants in heavy fur coats, exchanging goods. Fur is both fashion and necessity here, but furs trap dirt, sweat, and lice. They're rarely cleaned beyond a good shaking. In the Kremlin's wooden palace, nobles wear brocade and sable, yet underneath they itch as much as peasants. You hear church bells tolling for vespers. Incense. It burns inside the cathedral, thick enough to hide the stink of the congregation. It's colder here, and that helps a little. Smells freeze, but they never truly vanish. You stand quietly, breath misting. The air is sharp, raw, alive with history's rank breath. You realize hygiene here is a negotiation with the elements, the seasons, and the simple fact that there's nowhere else to go. You're in medieval Cairo now, at the edge of the bustling Khan al-Khalili bazaar. The desert sun bakes the whitewashed walls, and the smell is different, drier, but no less intense. You walk through crowded lanes where spices pile in pyramids of red and gold. The air is fragrant with cinnamon, cardamom, cumin, but beneath that is the sour note of sweat. It's hot. Everyone sweats. Bathing helps, but not enough. You watch a water seller hauling a goatskin sack on his back. He shouts for customers. The water is drawn from the Nile, filtered through clay pots. It's safer than in Europe, but still suspect during the floods when the river turns brown. Latrines exist here, small, private, tucked into courtyards. Waste is often collected by night soil men and carted away to the fields, but not always. You see alleys with suspicious wet patches. Flies swarm everywhere. You step into a hammam, the public bathhouse. Tiled, vaulted, filled with steam. Men recline on warm stones. Attendants scrub them with coarse cloths. It's more thorough than European baths, but shared water still carries surprises. You watch a man have his head shaved clean to fight lice. Others rub scented oils into their skin. There's pride here in being clean, but it's all relative. The bathhouse drains aren't perfect. Cockroaches scuttle in corners. Outside, butchers carve lamb carcasses under canvas awnings. The blood soaks into sand and dries to dark rust. Stray cats gather, mewling. You see a man sweep his shop's threshold with a palm frond broom, then toss the debris into the street. It's someone else's problem now. In wealthier homes, clay drains carry waste into cesspits. Servants empty them at night. The stench is better managed, but never gone. A muezzin's call to prayer floats over the city. People wash their hands, feet, and faces at fountains before entering the mosque. Ritual purity is taken serious. Sly. Yet outside the walls, rubbish heaps smoulder. You inhale the dry, layered scents, sweet spices, sweat, dust, old blood, rosewater. It's complex, human, unavoidably real. You pause, feeling the heat on your neck, listening to the hum of voices and insects alike. You think of all the ways humans try to be clean and how hard it is to ever truly succeed. You find yourself on a pilgrim road in medieval France. It's autumn. The fields are brown with stubble, the air sharp with wood smoke and damp leaves. You walk among travellers bound for Santiago, for Rome, for Jerusalem. They share the road with merchants, soldiers, beggars. The road is narrow, rutted, muddy. Every step squelches. Pilgrims carry badges sewn onto their cloaks, scallop shells, iron crosses. But they also carry lice, fleas and sores from weeks on the road. You see them scratching, resigned. They sleep in hostels or hospices run by monks. You peer inside one. Straw-stuffed mattresses line the floor. The straw is old, flattened, and alive with bugs. The smell is of sweat, damp wool, and stale breath. In the corner, a fire burns low. The smoke helps with fleas a little. It also chokes the room. You follow a monk to the latrine out back. It's a simple trench with a wooden plank. No privacy. Pilgrims wait their turn, shuffling and coughing. Someone mutters a prayer. Inside the hostel's kitchen, a pot of thin pottage bubbles over the hearth. Cabbage, barley, scraps of bone. The cook tastes it with a wooden spoon, then returns it to the pot. No one minds. Pilgrims wash at a trough outside. Cold water splashed on faces and hands. No soap. It's enough to feel human for a moment. Some rub their feet with goose fat to soothe cracked skin. Others bind ulcers with rags that haven't been boiled in months. You hear a group singing a hymn as they march on, determined to reach salvation despite the filth. The road itself is lined with human waste in places. Travellers relieve themselves in ditches. Dogs pick through discarded food. You walk on, the chill wind drying sweat on your back. You pass a bridge crowded with vendors selling relics, amulets, and questionable cures. You realise faith carries them forward, but faith doesn't keep them clean. You pause to watch the sunset in bands of gold and grey over the fields. The wind picks up. The smoke from a distant hearth drifts past. You close your eyes, breathing it all in. You think how every pilgrimage is a study in human endurance and human stink. You're standing in a medieval infirmary, not the grand hospital of modern dreams, but a long, low hall filled with rough wooden beds. The air smells of sour wine, sweat, and boiled herbs. You watch a nun in a stained wimple ladle a warm herbal brew into a sick man's mouth. She murmurs a prayer in Latin. The patient shivers under a grey wool blanket crawling with lice. There's no understanding of germs here. Cleanliness is spiritual, not practical. The floor is strewn with straw meant to soak up blood and vomit. It's replaced now and then, but not enough. Fleas scatter when the straw shifts. A monk leans over another patient, applying a poultice of crushed onion and butter to a wound. No gloves, no antiseptic. The cut is angry, oozing. He binds it with a linen strip used on another man yesterday. You hear low groans, the wet rattle of a dying man in the corner. A priest gives last rites, the incense smoke mixing with the stink of pus and unwashed bodies. A bucket of vinegar water sits near the door. Nuns dip cloths in it to wipe beds and hands, convinced it cleans. The vinegar can't kill what it needs to. You step outside for air. Even the courtyard is crowded. Patients who can walk huddle around a fire pit, coughing in unison. The infirmary's latrine is a pit lined with rough planks. It overflows after heavy rains, spreading its contents into the herb garden they use for medicines. Inside again, you notice the apothecary's shelves, jars of dried sage, rosemary and mint. They hang bundles of rue and wormwood over doorways, hoping to ward off pestilence. The strong smells are comforting, but they don't save anyone. Bloodletting bowls lie in a corner, crusted dark. The barber surgeon sharpens a blade, explaining to a patient that draining humours is the only cure. In the maternity room, a midwife kneels between a labouring woman's knees. The floor is stained from Countless births. She wipes her hands on her apron, then feels for the baby's head. No washing in between. You hear a baby's first cry, loud and defiant. The midwife smiles, cradling it with bloody hands. It's life and death here, side by side. You stand very still, watching the smoke from rush lamps curl upward, carrying the scent of humanity's best intentions and worst mistakes alike. You hold your breath, just for a moment. There's nowhere in here that's clean, but they try. And sometimes trying is all they have. You find yourself in a medieval university town, let's say Oxford in the 14th century. The bells toll in the morning mist, calling scholars to disputations. You walk down High Street, mud sucking at your boots. Students in woolen robes argue theology while dodging piles of horse dung. A man empties slops from an upper window. You sidestep just in time. Colleges are walled and gated, but filth seeps in. You pass under an archway into a college yard. Students spar with words about Aristotle and Augustine, but the latrines are little more than trenches behind sheds. The hall is smoky. There's a fire at one end, roasting mutton. The scent is good until it mixes with the reek of damp rushes on the floor, never changed in years. Long benches line trestle tables. Students jostle for bread trenchers, eating with unwashed hands. Dogs fight over bones beneath their feet. You step into the scholar's dormitory. A long room of narrow beds or pallets stuffed with straw. Lice are a fact of life. You see one student combing through his hair with an iron knit comb, examining the tiny bodies with scholarly interest. The walls are cold stone. Moisture beads in corners, feeding greenish mould. Some scholars burn herbs to purify the air, filling the space with acrid smoke. In the college library it's better, quiet, musty with parchment and candle wax. But even here the smell of sweat lingers. Students rarely bathe. Water has to be heated laboriously over a fire, and many think it's bad for your health. A professor explains the 4 humours to a crowd of young men, gesturing with ink-stained fingers. He recommends bloodletting for almost everything. You see a student nod gravely, clutching his bleeding arm from this morning's lesson. You pass by the college well, where water is drawn with a rope and bucket. The water's clear enough, but not always safe. Animals drink from it too, someone read. As aloud in Latin, the words echoing. You see the effort to civilize, to illuminate, but outside the window you hear pigs rooting through refuse in the lane. You stand quietly as the bells toll again. You realize they're building the foundations of learning on floors slick with filth. It's lofty thought with dirty feet, and it's the world's future, somehow. You're in a medieval Scottish Highland village now. The wind is sharp with peat smoke and wet heather. You see squat stone cottages with roofs of layered turf, green with moss. You walk between them on muddy paths churned by boots and hooves alike. The air is raw. It smells of damp earth, dung and wet wool cloaks. Inside a cottage, a family sits around a peat fire in the centre of the floor. Smoke curls up to the roof hole but lingers in the rafters, blackening them over years. Your eyes water. The floor is packed dirt, scattered with heather and rushes to soak spills. Pigs sleep in the corner in winter, sharing body heat with humans. You watch a woman comb lice from her child's hair with deft fingers. She squashes them between thumbnails. It's a daily ritual. The family eats from a common pot, a thick oat porridge cooked with kale and bits of salted meat. The spoon is wiped on a sleeve between users. Water comes from a nearby burn, a stream that's clean-looking but carries runoff from fields and animals. No one boils it. Fuel is precious. You step outside into the chill. Behind the house, there's a midden heap. It's where everything goes. Ashes, bones, human waste. The pile smoulders faintly, the smell carrying on the wind. You follow a narrow path to the village well. It's lined with stones, damp with moss. Buckets clank as they're drawn up. Children splash water on their faces, laughing despite the cold. Nearby, a woman beats laundry against a flat rock. The soap she uses is lye-based, harsh on hands. The water chills them to the bone. You see men working peat bogs, cutting blocks of dark fuel. Their hands and faces are streaked with mud. Peat fires are smoky but vital. As dusk falls, the cottages glow with firelight. The smoke spills out the roof holes and drifts low across the village. It mixes with the smell of animals and cooking. You stand in the doorway of a cot. Tage, feeling the heat on your face, the damp at your back. You realize this is survival, not comfort. It's warm, close, alive, and utterly filthy. You close your eyes, listening to the wind moan over the hills, carrying with it the history of lives lived hard and unclean. You're in medieval Constantinople, the jewel of the East, city of emperors and mosaics. But you're not standing in Hagia Sophia's shimmering nave tonight. You're in a narrow back street where real life happens. The air smells of spices, roasting meat, sweat, and sewage. You watch merchants pack up for the evening, sweeping trash into the street. Cats and dogs pick at scraps. Gulls scream overhead. Public latrines exist here. Stone seats over channels of running water. It's better than most cities, but maintenance is inconsistent. You peer inside one. The water is dark, sluggish. Someone has left graffiti on the walls in Greek, a crude joke about a rival merchant. The city has aqueducts and cisterns. Fresh water trickles from fountains, but people jostle to fill clay jars, sometimes spilling into the mud. You step into a bathhouse. It's a marvel of marble and steam. Men recline on heated stones while attendants scrub them. Domed ceilings trap the heat. It smells of soap, real olive oil soap, expensive but effective. But the water drains into old sewers. Cockroaches scatter along tile cracks. Even luxury can't keep out every pest. You watch an old scholar sit in the corner, dictating to a scribe while a servant plucks lice from his robe. He doesn't pause his lesson. Outside, the city's main thoroughfares gleam with paving stones, but alleys twist away into darkness where sewage runs in open ditches. You pass a butcher's stall closing for the night. Blood and offal stain the stones. Flies rise in black clouds. At a church service, incense fills the air, masking the congregation's unwashed bodies. The scent is heavy, sweet, almost choking. You hear a priest give a sermon on moral purity, voice echoing off gold mosaics. You wonder if anyone thinks about physical cleanliness the same way. As night falls, the city quiets. Oil lamps flicker in windows. You smell smoke, roasted, eggplant, old urine. You stand at the sea walls, watching the moon glint on the Bosphorus. The wind off the water is clean, but behind you, the city exhales its collective stink into the dark. You close your eyes, breathing carefully. Constantinople is magnificent and unavoidably human. You stand on the road to Rome, the eternal city, heart of an empire long fallen but still alive in the medieval imagination. The road is rutted, lined with ancient ruins, repurposed for farm walls and pig pens. As you enter the city gates, you're hit by the smell, an old city's scent of humanity piled on itself for centuries. Ash, dung, olive oil, wine, blood from the butcher's stalls, smoke from thousands of hearths. Rome has aqueducts still limping along, patched and rerouted by medieval engineers. Fountains burble in squares, sometimes dry in summer. People fill jugs, wash clothes, even drink from the same spout. You pass an insula, a cramped tenement. Families spill into the street, cooking over open fires. Children chase dogs through puddles of slop. A woman tosses waste from an upper floor, not bothering to shout. The Cloaca Maxima, the ancient sewer, still works after a fashion, but it's clogged in places. You see a work crew digging it out, gagging at the smell. You enter a church, cool and dark. Candles flicker, their smoke mixing with incense. The congregation prays fervently, ignoring the smell of unwashed hair, of sweat-soaked wool. A cardinal rides past on a white horse. His robe is spotless, but you know under it he wears linen rarely changed. Servants dust him with scented powders to keep lice at bay. You find a tavern near the forum. It's crowded, noisy. The floor is packed earth scattered with straw. Spilled wine and piss mingle. The owner pours wine from a cracked amphora. Food is simple. Beans, stale bread, stewed greens. The cook tastes with fingers, wipes them on his apron. You see a barber surgeon in the corner, offering to lance boils, pull teeth, or cut hair with the same dull blade. You step outside as bells toll from a distant basilica. The sound rolls over the 7 hills. The wind shifts, and for a moment, you catch a hint of rosemary and back. Eyeing bread, but it's fleeting. You stand still, taking it all in. Rome is ancient, layered, alive, and no matter how holy or grand, it can't escape its own smell. You're walking along the banks of the Thames in medieval London. It's morning, grey and damp. Fog curls off the river like breath from a sleeping giant, but the fog doesn't hide the smell. You see a tanner's yard near the water. Men scrape hides, soaking them in pits of urine and lime. The scent is brutal, sharp ammonia, rotting flesh. They work bare-armed, resigned. Dogs nose around the scraps. A barge glides by, piled high with barrels. Some hold ale, others night soil, collected from privies, ferried out of the city at dawn to be spread on distant fields. The bargemaster barely blinks at the smell. You wander through a street lined with butchers' stalls. Blood and offal spill into gutters. No one sweeps yet. Gulls screech overhead, feasting. Rats scuttle between stalls, fat and fearless. Nearby is a conduit, an early public fountain. People crowd with buckets. Water trickles out slowly. It's meant to be clean from springs outside the city, but pipes crack and waste seeps in. You pass a barber surgeon's shop. The striped pole spins lazily in the wind. Inside, you hear groans as a tooth is pulled. Blood drips into a cracked basin. The barber wipes his hands on his apron, ready for the next customer. Further on, you see a bathhouse, rare but real. The sign shows a steaming cauldron. Inside it's dark and sweaty. Men soak together, scrubbing with rough cloths. The water is grey, no one cares. They're here to relax. Soap is expensive, made from animal fat and lye, harsh on skin. Many skip it altogether. Those who can't afford the bathhouse rub themselves with vinegar or old wine. Latrines, few and far between. Most houses use chamber pots, emptied into the street with a casual "gardiloo" if you're lucky. In the wealthier homes, servants try to sweep and sprinkle herbs. Rushes on the floors catch spit, slops, whatever lands there, they're changed. Sometimes you step in to a church. Candles flicker. Incense burns to hide the smell of dozens of bodies packed together, unwashed. A priest drones in Latin about purity of the soul. You listen, standing very still. The wind outside howls through crooked streets, rattling shutters. You realise London is alive, teeming, filthy, human. You close your eyes. You could almost fall asleep here, standing in the dim cold, if only to dream of fresh air that doesn't exist yet. You're on a trade route in medieval Spain, somewhere between Toledo and Granada. The sun beats down, baking the dusty road until it cracks. The air smells of dry earth, olive oil, sweat, and pack animals. You watch a merchant caravan pass, mules laden with bolts of silk and barrels of wine. The drivers wear coarse linen shirts stained with days of travel. They haven't bathed since they left the last town's bathhouse, which may have been a week ago. You see water skins sloshing at the animals' sides. Precious water, meant for drinking first, washing second, if at all. You wander into a roadside inn as dusk falls. The floor is packed earth, strewn with straw. Chickens roost in a corner. The innkeeper ladles thick stew from a cauldron, wiping his hands on his apron between customers. You sit on a bench beside other travellers. They scratch at lice without shame, swatting flies that land on their cheeks. A jug of rough wine passes from mouth to mouth. Outside, someone empties a chamber pot into a shallow ditch. The smell drifts in on the breeze, fighting with the scent of stewed beans and roasting lamb. Nearby is a well. The rope creaks as a boy hauls up water, clear enough to see the bottom, but no guarantee it's safe. Animals drink here too, sometimes standing in it. You hear a story about the great bathhouses in Granada, with tiled walls and fountains. You dream of them even as you stand ankle-deep in mud outside the inn. Some towns along the route have public baths, remnants of Roman and Islamic traditions, warm steam rooms, cold pools, attendants to scrub your back. But you're not there yet. For now, you sleep in the common room on a flea-ridden straw mattress. Everyone snores. The fire burns low, filling the room with thick smoke. A dog curls at your feet, warm but pungent. Someone coughs in the dark. You listen to the wind moan through cracks in the shutters. You realise that even trade, this glorious lifeblood of kingdoms, is carried on the back of unwashed bodies and shared disease. You close your eyes, drifting with the knowledge that tomorrow's road will smell exactly the same, and there's nowhere else to go. You stand in a medieval port city, Marseille. The sea wind is sharp, salty. It carries fish stink and human refuse in equal measure. You watch fishermen gut their catch on wooden tables by the quay. Blood and scales slick the stones. Gulls scream, diving for scraps. The tide comes in, washing some of it away. But not all. Warehouses line the harbour, stacked with bales of wool, barrels of wine, amphorae of olive oil. Dockworkers haul them barefoot, sweat darkening their tunics. They haven't bathed in days, maybe weeks. You see a street vendor selling roasted mackerel. He wipes his greasy hands on his trousers before handing it over. No one complains. Near the docks, taverns spill drunk sailors into alleys. They relieve themselves against walls. The runoff mingles with fish guts and waste in the gutters. You step inside one of the bathhouses here. It's busier than in many towns. The Moors brought bathing culture with them, and it lingers. Tiled floors, heated rooms, a trickle of warm water from brass spouts. But even here, it's imperfect. Water is reused. A layer of grime clings to the surface. Lice can swim. Men and women soak, gossiping, occasionally arguing in Occitan, French, Italian, Arabic. The air smells of olive oil, soap, sweat, and steam. Outside again, you see a public fountain in a square. People crowd to fill buckets. Children splash. A woman scrubs laundry, the grey water foaming with cheap soap. A donkey drinks from the same trough. You wander into the older parts of town. Narrow alleys twist in shadow. Chamber pots are dumped from upper stories. Gardez-le is shouted in French, if at all. The main sewer is little more than an open ditch down the middle of the street. In dry seasons it bakes into a crust. In wet seasons it floods, carrying everything into the sea. You smell rosemary roasting with lamb in a home. It fights valiantly against the surrounding stink. Church bells toll in the distance. You hear prayers in Latin, calls to prayer in Arabic from travellers. You stand very still, feeling the breeze shift. It brings both relief and a new wave of smells. You close your eyes, letting the harbour sounds wash over you. Marseille is alive, chaotic, unclean, and for a moment, it's all yours. You're in a medieval German city, Nuremberg, let's say. The air is crisp with autumn chill, but it doesn't cleanse everything. You walk through narrow streets lined with half-timbered houses. Their upper stories lean over the road, blocking the weak sun. Gutters run down the centre, filled with brownish water that carries everything. Slop, piss, animal blood from butchers, rain. A man tosses something from a window. You jump aside just in time. He yells, "Vorsicht!" half-heartedly. You pass a butcher's stall. Pigs' heads grin from hooks. Blood pools on cobbles. A boy hoses it down with a bucket of water that's already filthy. Nearby is a tanner's yard. The smell is indescribable. Urine-soaked hides, rotting flesh. Workers stand barefoot in lime pits, skin cracked and white. They eat lunch without washing. You watch a baker sweep flour from his doorstep into the street. It joins the muck. Inside a burger's house, it's better. Rushes on the floor, sprinkled with herbs. They're replaced sometimes. Servants sweep ashes and slop into buckets. But the chamber pot still gets dumped into the street. In the town square, there's a fountain. Sculpted lions spout water into a basin. It's used for everything, filling jugs, watering horses, rinsing vegetables. You see a bathhouse sign swaying in the breeze. Inside, men soak in communal tubs. The water is warm, slightly opaque. Soap is scarce. An attendant scrubs your back with a rough cloth that's used on everyone. You notice lice combs for sale in the market. They're a necessity. In winter, smoke pours from chimneys, filling the air with the sharp scent of burning peat and pine. The smog settles, mixing with human stink. You hear a church bell toll. People crowd in for mass. Candles gutter in the drafty nave. Incense burns thickly. It's not just for piety, it's deodorant. You stand quietly in the back. Your breath fogs in the cold air. You realise that behind the carved facades, the stained glass, the gilt seals, it's all built on a layer of filth. You close your eyes, listening to the murmur of prayers. Even here, in a city of order and laws, cleanliness is more hope than reality, and hope is sometimes enough. You're in medieval Venice now. The lagoon laps quietly against mossy steps. Gondolas drift past, their oars creaking. The air smells of salt, fish, rot. You walk along narrow alleys that twist like a spider's web. Canals cut between them. Waste disposal? Simple. It goes in the water. Chamber pots empty into canals. Refuse floats, bobbing among the pilings. You see a fishmonger gutting eels on a wooden table. Blood runs off into the canal. The eels are sold fresh, sort of. A merchant ship unloads crates of spices from the east. Cloves, pepper, saffron. Their scent fights valiantly against the pervasive damp. You pass a wellhead in a square. Rainwater collects in hidden cisterns below, filtered through sand. It's precious. People queue with clay jugs. Inside a wealthy merchant's palazzo, things improve. Mosaic floors, fine glass. But chamber pots are still used upstairs. Servants dump them discreetly into the canal at dawn. In the poorer quarters, the smell is worse. Tight alleys trap it. Washing hangs overhead, dripping onto passers-by. You watch a barber surgeon sharpen his blade. He bleeds patients, pulls teeth, lances boils, all with one rag to wipe the blade. You step into a bathhouse. Steam fogs the windows. Inside, tiled walls gleam. Men soak, discussing trade routes and politics. The water is cloudy, reused until the end of the day. Soap is olive oil based, better than most, but expensive. Many just rinse and scrape. You hear the bells of San Marco. Pigeons flutter in the square. Tourists, pilgrims, merchants shuffle past, holding scented handkerchiefs to their noses. Gondoliers sing as they steer past. You smell old wine, spilled fish, and something green and unidentifiable in the water. At dusk, lanterns glow softly, reflecting off canals slick with oil and refuse. You stand at the edge of the lagoon. The wind shifts. For a moment, it smells almost clean. You close your eyes, listening to the water slap gently against stone. Venice is beautiful, impossible, filthy, and utterly alive. You stand in the courtyard of a medieval French chateau. The stone walls rise around you, imposing but draughty. Banners flutter in the chill wind. You watch servants haul buckets from the well. Water is precious, heavy. It takes time and labour to heat it, so bathing is rare. A noblewoman might bathe once a month, if she's fashionable. Inside the great hall, a roaring fire smokes in the chimney. The air is thick with the scent of roasting meat, wet wool cloaks steaming and the sharp tang of dogs who roam freely. Rushes cover the floor. They're sprinkled with lavender or rosemary to help with the smell, but they also hide everything: spit, bones, grease, even fleas. You watch a servant scatter fresh herbs over the old rushes without bothering to sweep first. The stink is layered. In a private chamber, a lord sits on a carved wooden stool over a chamber pot. He reads aloud from a psalter while doing his business. Later, a servant will empty it out the window or into the moat. Moats. They're defensive but also convenient sewers. You peer over the wall. The water below is green, stagnant and shimmers with oil and refuse. You follow the laundry maid to the riverbank. She beats sheets against rocks. Soap is precious, lye-based, harsh. She rinses the linens in brownish water, watching them swirl downstream. In the kitchen, a cook tastes stew with his fingers. He wipes them on his apron, which hasn't been washed in weeks. Pots are scrubbed with sand and water, but greasy residue remains. You notice a dog licking a trencher left on the table. Someone will scrape it and use it again tomorrow. A priest visits, blessing the household. He carries incense. The thick smoke helps cover the human smell in the air. You hear the Lord discuss purity of soul with him, ignoring the grime on his fingernails. As dusk falls, the hall fills with people. They eat, drink, fart, belch. Everyone feeds. Rom nights to kitchen boys shares the space. Lice are universal. You see a lady-in-waiting comb her mistress's hair by firelight, flicking lice into the flames. They pop tiny fireworks in the gloom. You stand in the corner, breathing shallowly. This is civilization, feudal luxury, the pinnacle of refinement, and it stinks. You close your eyes, letting the fire crackle lull you, imagining what it might be like if someone invented soap that didn't strip skin raw. You find yourself in medieval Cairo at the height of the Mamluk Sultanate. Dawn breaks over narrow streets, the call to prayer drifting on the cool air. But even here, filth thrives. You walk through a bustling souk, spices scent the air, cinnamon, cardamom, frankincense. But beneath that, you catch the smell of donkey dung, rotting vegetables, human waste. You see water sellers with goat skins slung over shoulders. They cry their trade, offering cool drinks. But the water is drawn from the Nile, full of silt and sometimes worse. You turn into a residential quarter. Alleyways wind tight. People toss slops into the street. Open sewers run down the middle, channels carved centuries earlier but never truly clean. A boy sweeps dust from a doorway. It settles back immediately. Dust is relentless here. You watch a baker slap flatbread onto the sides of a clay oven. Ash smudges his robes. He wipes sweat from his brow with the back of a floury hand. You pass a hammam, a bathhouse. Inside, steam curls from marble basins. Men sit on heated stones. Attendants scrub their backs with woven mitts. Soap, made from olive oil and scented with rosewater, is plentiful here, a legacy of Roman Islamic hygiene tradition. But the water drains into ancient pipes that sometimes back up. Cockroaches skitter across the tiles, and poorer districts can't afford the luxury at all. In one corner of the city, you see tanners' pits, where hides soak in lime and urine. The smell is overwhelming, sour and gagging. Workers stand barefoot in the mess, scraping hair from skins with curved knives. You visit a scholar's house. Inside, the floor is swept. Mats are beaten daily. Incense burns in brass censers. This is the ideal. But even here, fleas hide in woven mats. A muezzin calls out again. The city pauses in prayer. The faithful wash hands, faces, feet in ritual ablution. Cleanliness as faith. But the what? Air splashes onto dusty ground, mingling with animal droppings. You realize it's a city of contradiction. Ritual purity, daily filth. Lofty ideals, and the hard limits of pre-modern infrastructure. You stand very still, breathing in rosewater and sewage at once, and you know they tried, and that trying was sometimes the cleanest thing they could do. You stand on a windswept Scandinavian shore, let's say Denmark in the 12th century. Gulls wheel overhead crying, the salt air is brisk, bracing, but the village itself tells another story. You watch fishermen drag their boats onto shingle. They gut fish on the beach, tossing heads and entrails to the surf. Dogs and crows fight over the remains. The houses are low timber structures, thatched with reed. Smoke curls from holes in the roofs, heavy with peat and wood. Inside, it's warm but close, air thick with soot. The floor is beaten earth, strewn with straw and rushes. Goats sometimes sleep inside in winter. They leave droppings that are swept into the hearth come morning. You see a woman stirring a pot over the central fire. Fish stew bubbles. She wipes her hands on her skirt, then scratches at her hair. Lice are a fact of life. A boy fetches water from a well lined with stones. It's brackish from salt infiltration, a little gritty. No one boils it. Fuel is precious. You follow him to a pit latrine near the edge of the village. It's a hole with rough planks for a seat, nothing more. The smell drifts on the wind, blending with seaweed. You step into the longhouse. A chieftain sits on a carved bench drinking ale from a horn. He laughs, wiping foam from his beard. The same bench will be used for sleeping tonight, shared by family members and guests alike. The bedding is sacks of straw, rarely changed. Fleas are constant companions. A thrall girl beats laundry at the shore. She uses ash and lye soap that burns her hands raw. The water is freezing, numbing her fingers. Inside again, you see cured fish hanging from rafters. The smell is powerful, salty, sour, smoky. It's food security, but also pungent. You hear a skald reciting old sagas by firelight. Embers glow, smoke coils into the thatch, staining it black. Your eyes water. As night falls, wind rattles the walls. The sea roars beyond. Everyone huddles together for warmth. You stand quietly, feeling the chill seep in. This is survival, raw, immediate, and no one here pretends it's clean. You close your eyes, listening to the waves crash. Even the ocean can't wash it all away. You wander through medieval Florence, city of art, trade, money, and filth. It's early morning. Merchants raise their shutters. The smell of baking bread competes with the stench of the streets. You see open gutters lining the alleys, carrying refuse away slowly, very slowly. Rain helps flush them. In dry times they just sit, breeding flies. A butcher's boy tosses scraps into the gutter. Cats and dogs fight over them. You walk into a narrow street lined with tall stone houses. Upper floors overhang, casting the ground in shade even at noon. Laundry drips onto passers-by. Chamber pots are emptied from windows. Someone shouts aqua as a warning. Sometimes. You turn into a courtyard where a well stands. It's a social hub. Women draw water, gossiping. But contamination is common. So many hands, so many buckets, so many careless moments. You step into a wealthy merchant's home. Frescoes decorate the walls. Floors are swept, sprinkled with rosemary. Servants comb their master's hair, searching for lice. In the kitchen, a cook stirs a copper pot with a wooden spoon, tasting as he goes. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. You watch as a child picks at his scalp. Knits cling stubbornly. The nurse burns them in the hearth with grim satisfaction. Outside again, you see a barber surgeon's pole. Inside, he bleeds a customer with practiced ease. The bowl overflows darkly. He sharpens the blade for the next man. Near the Duomo, artists haul marble blocks. They're covered in dust and sweat, unwashed for days. The scent of humanity mixes with wet plaster. At night, candles flicker behind shuttered windows. The city goes quiet except for dogs barking, drunkards singing off-key. You stand in a doorway, listening. Florence is beautiful, brilliant, rich, and it stinks. You close your eyes, imagining the painted ceilings, the soaring domes, the promises of civilization, all built on streets that run with muck because progress is messy, and sometimes it smells like rot. You're in a medieval monastery now. The bell tolls for matins before dawn. You stand in the cloister as cold dew settles on carved stone. But even this holy place isn't immune to filth. You watch monks shuffle in procession, robes brushing the damp floor. They bathe only occasionally, Water is for spiritual cleansing first, health second. You see the lavatorium, a long trough with spouts. Monks wash their hands before meals, murmuring prayers. No soap, just water, sometimes scented with herbs. Inside the refectory, the smell is of boiled cabbage, stale bread, unwashed bodies. They eat in silence, trenchers soaking up broth, wiped on habits between bites. You wander into the dormitory, rows of simple beds, straw mattresses. Fleas hide in the seams, lice combs sit on small shelves. A monk scratches absently at his tonsure. They all share combs. It's an accepted annoyance. You visit the necessarium, the latrine. It's a long stone bench with holes set over a channel of running water. Better than most places, but not perfect. The water carries waste away eventually. The smell hangs anyway. You hear chanting from the church. Incense burns thickly, a holy deodorant. It mingles with damp wool and candle smoke. In the infirmary wing, a brother applies salves to a wound. He uses the same pot of ointment on several patients. Cross-contamination is unknown. Herbs hang from the beams, sage, lavender, rosemary, meant to purify the air. Their dry, sharp scent battles the musty chill. You see the scriptoria where monks copy texts by candlelight. Melted wax pools on desks. They cough in the cold, breath fogging. One sneezes into his sleeve, then keeps writing. Outside, the cloister garden blooms with medicinal plants, but the compost pile steams nearby, human and animal waste mixing to feed next year's remedies. You stand very still. The wind brings birdsong, then the faint reek of manures. This is a place of learning, faith, discipline, and it still can't escape the stink. You close your eyes, listening to the bells toll again, reminding you that even in prayer there's no true cleanliness, only the effort. You find yourself in medieval Ireland, the western edge of Christendom. Dawn creeps over wet green fields, mists hanging low. It's beautiful, but there's a smell under the dew. You walk through a small ring-fort village. Earth ramparts circle timber houses with thatched roofs, moss growing thickly. Smoke seeps from roof holes, heavy with peat fumes. Inside a round house, it's dim and close. A central hearth glows red. Smoke curls lazily, blackening the beams overhead. It burns the eyes. The floor is packed dirt, scattered with rushes and heather. Goats and pigs wander in at night, sharing body heat. They leave droppings that are swept into the fire each morning. You watch a woman churn butter. She wipes her nose on her sleeve, then plunges her hand back in. It's normal. There's no concept of sterilization. A child squats in the corner, relieving himself onto straw. His mother scolds gently, then spreads fresh rushes over it. No pit latrine here. You follow a man to the well. It's lined with flat stones, filled with rain and groundwater. Clear enough to see your face, but animals drink from it too. No one boils it. Fuel is too precious. The family eats from a common pot. Barley porridge, bits of dried fish or bacon. Everyone dips with their own wooden spoons, licking them clean between bites. You see clothes drying on a hedge, their homespun wool, stained with use. Lice combs hang from belts like tools of war. On wash days, clothes are boiled with lice soap made from ashes and fat. It burns skin raw, but it kills some vermin. In the monastery nearby, monks chant in Gaelic and Latin. They wash before prayer in a stone basin. Cold water, no soap, purity of soul over body. The graveyard is damp, graves shallow. After heavy rain, bones sometimes appear at the surface. The villagers quietly rebury them. As dusk falls, the ring-fort gate is barred. Families huddle by fires tell Ling stories of Ku Chulayin and saints. Smoke settles over everyone like a blanket. You stand near the gate, feeling dampness creep through your boots. You realize survival here is raw, communal, unpretentious, and dirty. You close your eyes. The wind whistles over ancient stones, carrying peat smoke and the memory of lives lived close to the land. No clean lines, just survival. You're in a medieval Russian village on the edge of the forest. Winter is coming early. The cold bites through linen and wool. You see smoke rise from izbas, wooden huts with steep roofs to shed snow. Outside, the ground is frozen hard, but the smell of manure still hangs faintly in the air. Inside an izba, it's warm but smoky. The pechka, a massive clay stove, radiates heat. People sleep on top of it for warmth. The floor is wood, swept with birch twigs, but chickens scratch in corners. A piglet squeals, confined inside for the winter. Its droppings are swept into the stove, feeding the fire. A woman ladles cabbage soup from a blackened pot. She tastes it, then dips the same spoon again. The pot has a permanent ring of soot. You see a man stripping off his felt boots. His feet are grey with dirt. They rarely wash. Water is cold, scarce when the rivers freeze. But there's the banya. You follow them there. It's a small log cabin, half buried for insulation. Inside, a stone stove crackles. Steam billows as water is thrown on hot rocks. They strip naked, beating themselves with birch branches to sweat out impurities. It's cleansing, but the water on the floor is black with use by the end. They leave the banya red-faced, steam pouring off them into the freezing night. They roll in snow to close their pores. It's a ritual, cleansing by extremes. Outside again, the village is quiet. Dogs bark at distant wolves. The outhouse is just a hole in the ground, covered by a crude shack. In winter, it freezes solid. You see clothes hanging stiffly on a line. They're thick, homespun, mended many times. Lice combs lie on windowsills. Inside the izba, people gather close, sharing warmth, breath, stories. Someone coughs, wiping spittle on their sleeve. The air is heavy with peat smoke, boiled cabbage, unwashed wool. You stand by the door, feeling the cold seep in despite the fire. You realize it. Cleanliness here is survival, not perfection, steam and sweat, dirt and ice. You close your eyes, listening to the stove pop and hiss, and you know that in the dark heart of winter, even filth is forgiven if it keeps you alive. You're standing in medieval Prague, perched over the Vltava River. It's morning, mist rising from the water. Bells toll softly from church towers. You walk along cobbled streets, slick with overnight rain. The gutters run down the middle, carrying everything. You see a maid toss a bucket of slops onto the street. It splashes, mixing with horse dung. She glances at you, shrugs, and goes back inside. Butcher's stalls line a square. Pigs' heads stare blankly. Blood pools darkly. A boy hoses it with a bucket of river water, watching it swirl away. You step into a tavern. The floor is packed earth, scattered with straw. Beer foam drips from mugs onto tables sticky with use. A man sneezes violently, wiping his nose on his sleeve. No one reacts. In the corner, a barber surgeon plies his trade. He leeches one man while debating scripture with another. His blade rests on the table, unwashed, waiting its next victim. You step back outside. The bridge over the Vltava is crowded. Vendors sell fish that smell a day too old. Eels squirm in buckets of grey water. A public fountain trickles in a small square. Children fill clay jugs, splashing. Women rinse clothes, the soap cheap and harsh. A dog drinks from the same basin. You hear Latin chants from a nearby monastery. Inside, monks copy texts by candlelight. The air is musty with ink and wax. Lice crawl unnoticed under robes. You walk into a wealthy burgher's home. The walls are hung with bright tapestries. Rushes cover the floor, sweetened with lavender. But look closer. They're filthy underneath, rarely replaced. A servant carries a chamber pot, head held high. It'll be dumped discreetly into the gutter. At dusk, lamps glow in windows. Smoke from countless hearths hangs in the cold air. You stand on a hill above the city, listening to the muffled sounds of life. Prague is proud, learned, devout, and it stinks. You close your eyes, feeling the damp on your face. Civilization built on rot and hope. You breathe it in, knowing there's no other way. You find yourself in a Crusader castle in the Levant. The sun beats on limestone walls, blindingly bright. The wind carries scents of dust, sweat and blood. Inside the walls, it's cooler but not clean. Knights clank in armor, rust blooming where sweat dries. They sleep in mail that's rarely washed, picking lice from seams. You wander into the courtyard. Pack animals bray. Their dung bakes in the sun. Flies swarm, settling on anything that doesn't move. The kitchen is an open hearth. A cook stirs barley porridge with a splintered spoon. He wipes his face on his sleeve, leaving a greasy smear. Water is hauled from a distant well, guarded against sabotage. It's precious, used first for drinking, rarely for washing. You see soldiers gathered around a trough, rinsing hands half-heartedly before meals. The water clouds with dirt. A latrine pit sits in one corner of the bailey. It's dug deep, but the heat ripens the smell. They throw lime in now and then, not enough. You enter the chapel. Candles flicker before icons. The air is close, heavy with incense masking sweat. A priest chants in Latin. Flies buzz around his head. Near the walls, an infirmary. Wounded men groan on straw pallets. A surgeon splashes wine on a knife before cutting. That's antiseptic here. You see bandages drying on a line. They're reused. A knight boasts of bathing once before departure, weeks ago. Others laugh, scratching. You watch a squire scrape rust from a helmet with sand. His fingernails are black with grime. The wind picks up, bringing relief. It carries the scent of rosemary from a nearby hill, fleeting. As night falls, torches gutter in brackets. Shadows stretch along the battlements. You stand in a tower doorway, watching stars prick the sky. This is holy war, pious, violent, and dirty. You close your eyes. The stones cool under your hand. Faith doesn't make you clean, just determined. You're in medieval Naples, perched on a volcanic bay. Dawn breaks pink over tiled roofs. Gulls scream at fishing boats returning to port. You walk through narrow lanes. Tall houses lean over the street, blocking sun. It's cooler, but claustrophobic. A woman tosses waste from an upper window. It splashes in the gutter. She doesn't even call a warning. Butchers open shop fronts. Blood runs off the chopping blocks onto cobbles. They rinse it with a bucket of seawater. It doesn't help much. You pass a baker's shop. The smell is glorious, fresh bread, but the floor is tracked with mud and ash. A boy sweeps desultorily, pushing crumbs and dirt out the door. A fountain bubbles in a small piazza. People fill amphorae, wash vegetables, splash faces. A dog laps at the basin edge. You see a public latrine. Stone seats over a drain that runs downhill. Better than most places, but the smell clings. Inside a wealthy merchant's house, mosaics gleam. Frescoes depict myth and scripture, but chamber pots are carried through these halls to be dumped outside. You watch a barber surgeon sharpening his blade. He talks amiably with his next client while wiping blood from the last with his sleeve. At the docks, fishmongers gut catch on the stones. Scales and guts slide into the water. The tide carries it away until it washes back. At dusk, lanterns glow behind shutters. Lovers whisper on balconies. The smell of garlic and frying sardines drifts out, almost hiding the underlying rot. You stand at the harbour, watching the sea. It breathes in and out, waves slapping stone. You close your eyes, listening to the city settle for the night. Naples is lively, passionate, unrepentantly filthy and beautiful, because even the dirtiest places can sing. You're standing in a medieval German monastery high in the Black Forest. Mist curls through towering pines. It's quiet except for the hush of wind in needles. You follow a line of monks into the cloister. They chant softly, breath steaming in the cold dawn. Their robes are heavy wool, damp at the hem, smelling of lanolin and mildew. The cloister walk is paved with uneven stone. Puddles linger from last night's rain. Moss creeps up the walls. You enter the refectory. Long wooden tables gleam with years of grease and polish. A lay brother sprinkles herbs on the floor, thyme, sage, to fight fleas and odour. But underneath it's layered with decades of crumbs and dust. The monks eat in silence, dipping stale bread into thin broth. Trenchers are wooden, scored with cuts, never truly clean. They wipe them with rags that have seen better days. You watch a novice scratch at his scalp. Lice combs are communal. Each monk carries one, a humble acknowledgement that even God's servants aren't spared vermin. You step into the kitchen. Smoke stings your eyes. Massive hearths blaze, boiling cauldrons of pottage. A cook stirs with a carved paddle that has absorbed countless meals. He sneezes, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Latrines are set in a small stone building over a slow-moving stream. Better than most, but in winter the water freezes, leaving the smell hanging in the icy air. In the infirmary wing, you see a brother preparing a poultice. He dips the rag in wine, reuses it without rinsing. The patient watches, resigned. You wander into the scriptorium. Candles burn low. Monks bend over vellum, quills scratching. They cough in the cold. Wax drips onto manuscripts. A brother sneezes, wipes his hand on his robe, then turns the page. They sing the hours in the chapel. Incense smokes heavily, not just holy but necessary to mask the reek of packed bodies and wet wool. Outside, the vegetabier. The garden smells of damp earth and compost. Animal manure spread thick to coax life from rocky soil. You stand in the cloister walk as the bells toll. It's beautiful, disciplined, devoted, and it smells of sweat, rot, smoke, and faith. You close your eyes, feeling the cold stone under your hand, because even here, among prayers and psalms, there's no such thing as pure cleanliness, only striving. You're in medieval Constantinople, the city of the world's desire. The Bosphorus glitters under a hazy sun. Gulls wheel overhead, screeching. You walk through the Forum of Constantine. Marble columns gleam, vendors shouting Greek and Latin. Incense wafts from nearby churches. But beneath the grandeur is grime. You see water sellers pushing carts. Their barrels come from public cisterns fed by aqueducts. Marvels of engineering, but prone to cracks that let in filth. You follow a servant dumping slops into a drainage channel carved centuries earlier. It runs beneath mosaicked pavements, out to the Golden Horn. The water carries human waste, animal blood, street refuse. In the Grand Palace, courtiers wear embroidered silks. They dab perfume on wrists to hide body odour. Baths are taken, yes, but not daily. Heating water is expensive. You pass a public bathhouse. Inside, steam curls from marble pools. Men gossip, splash water, scrub with olive oil soap. It's cleaner than most places, but the water is changed once a day, at best. By evening, it's a communal soup of sweat and dirt. You watch an old man scrape himself with a strigil, removing dead skin and grime in satisfying curls. He rinses in cloudy water. Outside again, you see butchers selling lamb carcasses. Blood drips onto the cobbles. A boy tosses offal into the gutter, where stray dogs snarl over it. Near Hagia Sophia, you smell incense so thick it's dizzying. Pilgrims crowd in, unwashed after weeks on the road. The mix of holy and human is overwhelming. You pass through narrow alleys where washerwomen slap linens against stones. They rinse them in basins that fill from street runoff during rains. A noble's mansion has a private latrine set over a cesspit lined with brick. It will need to be emptied soon by men called gong farmers who work at night to spare the nose of polite society. In poorer quarters, chamber pots are emptied from windows with a quick prayer. Kyrie Eleison is whispered before the splash. As dusk falls, oil lamps glow in windows. You hear prayers, laughter, bargaining. Life, messy and glorious. You stand on a balcony, looking at rooftops crowded with chimneys. Smoke curls lazily into a pinkening sky. Constantinople is the jewel of empires, and it stinks like anywhere else. You close your eyes, listening to distant church bells and calls to prayer mingling, because even here, civilization has to wade through its own waste. You're in medieval Edinburgh, perched on its volcanic ridge. The castle looms above the old town. It's dawn, the hair rolling in from the firth, damp and cold. You walk the high street, narrow and cobbled. Tall tenements crowd close, leaning in like gossips. People dump chamber pots from windows. They shout, "Gardilou," if they're polite. You watch a splash arc into the gutter, steam rising in the chill. The gutter is just a central channel down the road. Rain flushes it occasionally, otherwise it festers with slop. Blood from butchers, ash from hearths. You step into a tavern. The floor is scattered with rushes that hide spit, spilled ale, and worse. A barmaid wipes a tankard with a greasy rag before filling it again. A man sneezes violently, spraying his neighbour. They laugh, clapping shoulders. Upstairs in the tenements, families crowd into single rooms. The bedding is straw, alive with fleas. Lice combs are a household necessity. You hear a midwife coaching a birth behind a thin partition. There's no sterilisation. Bloody rags will be rinsed in the closest well. The well is in a square down the road. A line of women gossip, filling buckets. The water is cold, sometimes brown after rains wash the streets. Nearby, a barber surgeon advertises tooth-pulling and bloodletting. You see the stained basin, flies buzzing. In the fleshers close, butchers work in open stalls. Blood seeps between cobbles. A boy hoses it with a bucket. It runs straight into the street drain. Inside a kirk, candles flicker. The congregation packs tight, unwashed wool steaming slightly in winter. Incense isn't common here. They just endure. The wind howls down the closes, narrow alleys that funnel drafts. People huddle in cloaks that haven't seen soap in months. You stand at the edge of the Royal Mile, looking downhill toward Holyrood. Edinburgh is proud, pious, fiercely independent, and it stinks. Like any other medieval city, you close your eyes, feeling the damp settle in your bones, because in the end, filth is democratic. Everyone lives in it. You're in medieval Baghdad during the Abbasid Golden Age. The Tigris glitters under the sun, boats drifting lazily. You walk through wide avenues lined with date palms. Water sellers hawk drinks from goatskins, calling in rhythmic chants. You smell spices, cinnamon, cardamom, cumin, mingling with the less pleasant scents of animals and people. You pass a bathhouse with tiled walls. Inside, marble floors shine. Water flows from brass taps. Men scrub with olive oil soap. Attendants offer massages. It's cleaner than Europe, but not perfect. The water is drawn from wells or canals. In droughts, it stagnates. Lice and fleas travel freely despite the best efforts. In the marketplace, butchers hang skinned goats in the sun. Flies settle instantly. A boy fans them half-heartedly. Blood runs onto straw. You see a perfumer grinding rose petals, distilling oils. A rich man buys a vial to dab on wrists, masking sweat. You turn into an alley where drains run openly, carrying refuse away. Cats and dogs prowl for scraps. You enter a wealthy scholar's house. It has latrines, stone seats over clay pipes leading to cesspits. Servants empty them at night, carting waste outside the walls to dump in fields. Inside, floors are swept daily. Mats are beaten to chase out fleas. Incense burns in brass censers, filling rooms with sandalwood smoke. But even here, a servant scratches at lice. He combs them into a candle flame with practiced skill. You see water carriers filling jars at a public cistern. Children splash, giggling. The water is cool, muddy after rains. A surgeon prepares a cautery iron in the souk. He wipes it on his robe between patients. Sterilization is unknown. As dusk falls, the call to prayer echoes from minarets. People wash hands, feet, faces before entering mosques. Ritual purity, spiritual cleanliness. But outside, the city stews in its own complexity. You stand very still, smile. Elling smoke, spices, sewage. Baghdad is learned, sophisticated, cultured, and it stinks too. You close your eyes. The Tigris whispers past. Even civilization at its peak can't wash away everything. You're on the Camino de Santiago, the great medieval pilgrimage route across northern Spain. Dawn breaks cold over rolling hills. You walk with other pilgrims, feet wrapped in worn leather. Dust cakes your robe. Everyone smells of sweat, earth, unwashed wool. You see a wayside inn. Its sign swings in the breeze. Inside, a smoky fire burns. Travellers crowd benches, sharing garlic stew. No one minds the fleas. They're part of the journey. You watch a hostess ladle stew into cracked bowls, wiping them with a rag between customers. A pilgrim empties his chamber pot out back onto the manure heap. Flies rise in a buzzing cloud. You visit the well in the courtyard. Water sloshes as buckets rise. It's cool, cloudy. Pilgrims drink gratefully, ignoring the taste of soil. You pass a roadside chapel. Inside, candles gutter. The priest blesses blistered feet, ignoring their smell. Incense coils around the rafters. Further along, you see a hospice run by monks. They tend wounds with herbal salves but share bandages between patients. In the dormitory, pallets are stuffed with straw. Lice and fleas crawl freely. Pilgrims scratch absently, muttering prayers. A barber surgeon sets up near the gate. He offers to lance blisters, pull teeth, bleed you for a fee. His knives lie on a rag, bloodstained. You smell roasting meat from a stall. It battles the stench of animal dung, unwashed bodies, spilled wine. At night, the inn's common room is full. Snoring, farting, coughing. The fire smoulders low, filling the air with acrid smoke. You stand in the doorway, listening to the wind outside. This is devotion. This is penance. And it's dirty. You close your eyes. The Camino stretches ahead, a ribbon of faith, hardship and filth. Because salvation doesn't promise clean feet, just the hope you'll get there. You find yourself in medieval Paris, walking along the Rue Saint-Jacques as dawn lifts over the rooftops. The air is damp, sweet with the scent of baking bread, and something far less pleasant drifting up from the gutters. You watch a baker's apprentice sweep yesterday's ashes into the street. The soot mixes with horse dung and cabbage leaves. A dog noses through it, tail wagging. The gutter runs down the centre of the road, a permanent stream of waste. When it rains, it flushes into the Seine. When it's dry, it stews. You step into a small tavern, tucked beneath a timber upper floor. Inside, the air is warm, thick with sour wine, wet wool, and the sharp ammonia tang of unwashed humanity. A barmaid wipes tankards with a rag. She sneezes, wipes her nose on the same cloth and goes back to work. You climb a creaking staircase to rented rooms above. The straw mattress is damp. You lift it and find fleas crawling along the underside. You lower it again. From the window, you watch a woman empty a chamber pot into the street. She shouts a warning, sometimes. You hear a splash and a curse below. Near the cathedral, washerwomen pound clothes against stones by the river. The water looks clean until you notice scraps of offal drifting past, and the sheen of old fish oil. You wander into a perfumer's shop. Shelves are lined with oils, rose, lavender, civet. Customers dab them behind ears to mask body odour. The perfumes are strong enough to make your eyes water. You follow an apothecary down an alley to a small courtyard where he dumps the leavings from his tinctures. Colourful sludge seeps into the soil. In the marketplace, butchers stand ankle-deep in gore. Blood trickles into channels carved between cobblestones. A boy tosses sawdust over the mess, but it barely helps. As dusk falls, lamplighters come. The warm glow doesn't soften the smells. You hear bells toll vespers. People crow. Themselves, stepping carefully around puddles. You stand at a crossroads as the city quiets. Somewhere a dog barks. The Seine laps at its banks, carrying the day's waste toward the sea. Paris is proud, wealthy, devout, and filthy. You close your eyes, imagining candlelit manuscripts and rose windows gleaming, all built on streets that never stay clean, because civilization always comes with a smell. You're in medieval Venice, the city of canals and commerce. Dawn creeps over water that glitters greenish under pale light. You stand on a wooden bridge. Gondolas glide past, oars stirring the sluggish tide. But look closer. The canals are the city's sewers, carrying everything away when the tide turns. You watch a woman pour a bucket of waste into the canal. She does it quickly, glancing around. Everyone pretends not to notice. You step into a fish market under an arcade. Wooden slabs are covered in squid, eels, heaps of sardines. Scales and guts slide to the floor, washed occasionally with a splash of brine. The air is sharp and fishy. A merchant wipes his hands on his doublet, then offers you olives. You decline politely. You cross into a campo where children chase each other around a cistern. Water is precious, caught from rain, stored underground. It tastes a little of limestone, a little of rot. Inside a noble's palazzo, servants sprinkle rosemary on rushes. Frescoes shine overhead, saints looking down on humans, trying not to gag at the smell of damp plaster and unwashed clothes. In the kitchen, a cook stirs polenta in a copper pot, sweat dripping from his nose. He wipes his brow, stirring again. You pass a barber-surgeon's shop. A bloody rag hangs from a peg. The basin of leeches is cloudy with old water. At the arsenal, shipwrights hammer planks. Tar fumes mix with sweat and the ever-present reek of the canals. You see washerwomen rinsing linens at the water's edge. Soap made from ashes and tallow floats in greasy scum. As evening comes, lanterns sway over the water. The tide rises, bringing a fresh wave of stench. No one mentions it. You stand on a landing, watching moonlight shimmer on ripples that look deceptively clean. Venice is dazzling, cunning, full of riches, and its canals are the arteries of filth. You close your eyes, listening to the creak of ropes and the hush of water against stone, because beauty floats on a tide of waste, and everyone here accepts it. You're in medieval London, Southwark to be precise. The Thames glitters beyond timber warehouses. Gulls scream over fish heads tossed onto the mud. You walk crooked lanes paved in flint. Gutters run down the middle, filled with a dark slurry of refuse. A woman empties a pail into the street. You step aside just in time. She doesn't apologize. In a tavern near the bridge, the air is hot, thick with bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. Tankards clink, and somewhere a man is retching. A boy drags a bucket of offal from the butcher's stall to dump it in the river. He comes back wiping his hands on his tunic. You cross London Bridge itself, houses jutting over the water, shops crammed side by side. Chamber pots are emptied straight into the river below. You stop by St. Mary Overies churchyard. The ground is churned to mud, graves shallow. After a hard rain, bones sometimes surface. You step into a cook shop where pies steam on a counter. The floor is gritty with old crumbs and ashes. A cook wipes his hands on his apron, then folds pastry. At the public latrine, a simple wooden bench over the river, you watch a man relieve himself with a sigh. The waste drops straight into the flow. Back on the bank, washerwomen pound linens in brownish water. Soap is harsh, sometimes made from mutton fat. Hands crack and bleed in winter. As dusk falls, the bells of St. Paul's toll across the roofs. Smoke rises from hundreds of hearths. The air thickens with soot and the day's leavings. You stand on a wharf, watching tides swirl the waste into eddies that shine under the moon. London is crowded, ambitious, proud, and it stinks. You close your eyes, feeling the cold river breeze on your face. Because the greatest cities are built on filth no one talks about, and somehow people carry on. You're in medieval Avignon during the papal residence. The Rhone drifts past the city walls, slow and muddy. You walk narrow lanes between high stone houses. Gutters run beneath your feet, covered by boards. Occasionally, a whiff escapes. You watch a servant lug a chamber pot out a side door. He dumps it quickly into the drainage channel, glancing over his shoulder. The Pope's palace gleams above the town, fortress and church in one. Inside, tapestries hang over cold walls. Incense burns constantly to mask the smell of unwashed clergy, damp stone, and the faint reek of privies. You step into the kitchen. Huge cauldrons bubble. Cooks stir stews with wooden paddles stained black. No one thinks of cleaning them beyond a quick rinse. A barber surgeon sets up in a courtyard, his knives lined neatly. He bleeds a monk, then wipes the blade on his apron. You see washerwomen at the river's edge. Linens slap against stones, rinsed in water that carries every upstream village's waste. Near the bridge, fishermen gut their catch on the quay. Gulls squabble over entrails. The air is fishy and thick. As night falls, lanterns flicker in windows. The alleys go dark, but the smell of the day lingers. You stand by the river, listening to the water move past, carrying everything with it. Avignon is powerful, holy, full of intrigue, and it reeks like any other medieval town. You close your eyes, feeling the damp chill, because even the seat of popes is built on filth, and nothing can change that. You're in medieval Jerusalem during the Crusader occupation. The air is dry, bright, almost blinding under the desert sun. You walk the bazaars, narrow, crowded, alive with traders shouting in dozens of tongues. Spices, leather, brass glint in the sun. But under it all is the scent of sweat, camels and drains clogged with refuse. You see a soldier in mail scratching at fleas under his surcoat. He shrugs, resigned. Near the church of the Holy Sepulchre, pilgrims press close, unwashed after weeks of travel. The mingled reek is staggering. Incense burns in huge brass censers to cover it. A cookshop simmers, lentil stew in a copper pot. Flies land on the ladle. No one seems to care. In an alley, a boy empties a chamber pot into the gutter. It runs downhill, carrying everything out the city gate, eventually. You step into a bathhouse. Marble floors are cracked, but water trickles from a cistern. Men scrub with sand and olive soap. It's cleaner than most places, but not immune to lice. Back outside, butchers dress, goats in the shade. Entrails are dumped behind stalls, drying in the sun. The smell is a wall you walk through. At dusk, torches flare to life. Shadows grow long on ancient walls. The heat fades, but the odor lingers. You stand in a gateway, listening to the city settle into uneasy sleep. Jerusalem is sacred, contested, drenched in faith, and it stinks too. You close your eyes. The night wind stirs your hair, because holiness doesn't promise hygiene, only purpose. You're deep in the forests of medieval Poland. It's autumn, damp leaves underfoot. The trees drip with last night's rain. You approach a village ringed with palisade walls. The scent of wood smoke is strong, but not strong enough to cover the scent of manure. Huts are made of timber and clay, thatched thickly to hold in heat. Chickens peck in the muddy yard, walking freely between beds of cabbages. You enter a home through a low door. The inside is dark, smoky, and warm from the central hearth. Straw covers the packed earth floor, layered with crushed herbs to keep bugs away. You notice piglets sleeping under the table. The family shares space with their animals. Winter is coming. You watch a woman wash a child in a wooden basin. The water is tepid, reused from yesterday. A bit of soap root helps, but the grime is stubborn. They wear thick, homespun wool. It hasn't been washed in weeks, only brushed, aired and mended. Outside, the village latrine is a pit near the edge of the forest. The wind sometimes carries its scent back into the village. When it overflows, they dig a new one. You walk past a small shrine to a local saint. Someone's tied a lice comb to it with string, a hopeful offering. There's a community bathhouse here, fired once a week. Villagers steam together, scrubbing skin with birch branches. It's good for the spirit. The water turns brown by the third bather. Afterward, they roll in snow or dunk in a stream. It's invigorating and cold. You stand under an old oak, listening to a rooster crow. A man walks past with a pail of urine. He's saving it to tan leather or scrub the floor. You wrinkle your nose. It doesn't help. This is survival living, resourceful, practical, and absolutely rank. You close your eyes as smoke filters through the trees, because even here, where the air is cleanest, the people aren't. You're aboard a medieval merchant ship sailing from Genoa. The waves slap against the hull, gulls scream overhead, and everything smells like salt and sweat. You descend into the hold. It's dark, cramped, and hot. Men sleep in hammocks above barrels of wine, olive oil, and salted fish. You see rats dart between crates. They're part of the crew. There's one bucket for waste, shared by all. It sloshes ominously when the ship lists. You step onto the main deck. The sailors are sunburnt, unshaven, and shirtless. They haven't bathed since port. Clothes dry stiffly on lines strung above deck. Salt crusts every seam. You pass the galley, a smoky corner where dried beans boil in seawater. The cook stirs with a carved oar. No one comments when he sneezes into the pot. A boy washes dishes with sand and seawater. It leaves them clean enough, sort of. The captain smells like cloves. He chews them to mask his breath, which reeks of old wine. During storms, everyone's soaked in rain and seawater. It's the cleanest they'll get. In calmer weather, they scrape barnacles off the hull and their own skin with the same knife. Bathing, not worth it. Fresh water is for drinking only. You watch a sailor clean his teeth with a twig, spit over the side, then wipe his face on his sleeve. The wind changes. The ship groans. Someone vomits into the sea. You move toward the stern where a man is shaving another's head with a rusted blade. He checks for lice, flicking them away. The sun bakes the deck. The smell of sweat rises with the heat. They sing to pass time. The songs are loud, crude, joyful. You stand near the prow, wind in your face. It almost clears your head, almost. This is the trade route that fuels empires, and it smells like an armpit soaked in fish brine. You close your eyes. The sails snap overhead because the price of commerce is discomfort, and hygiene is the first thing thrown overboard. You're in a medieval battle camp outside the walls of Orleans. The year is 1429. Smoke curls from campfires, mingling with the tang of sweat, grease and blood. Tents crowd the muddy field. Horses stamp nearby, tails twitching at flies. You step past stacks of rusting weapons. Armor hangs on frames to dry, soaked through with yesterday's rain and men's sweat. You duck into a tent. Soldiers huddle close, sharing wine and boiled beans. One's got lice, another has trench foot. No one is surprised. The latrine trench lies at the far edge of camp. It overflows. Someone has tried to cover the smell with straw. It doesn't work. A squire cleans a knight's mail with vinegar and sand. His own hands are black with grime. You see a surgeon boiling his tools in wine. It's as sterile as it gets. The bandages are bloodstained and will be reused. The wounded groan under makeshift awnings. Flies buzz freely. There's not enough clean cloth or water. The cook stirs stew in a cauldron that's never been scrubbed. Meat of uncertain origin simmers inside. Everyone stinks, even the nobleman. Perfume covers little. Rain starts again. The ground turns to slurry. Men sleep in their armor, soaked to the bone. You hear someone coughing hard, spitting into the mud. They wipe their mouth on their sleeve and go back to sharpening arrows. There's a priest here offering last rites. His robes are stiff with filth. His hands are cleanest in camp. You watch a man pick fleas from his beard. He tosses them into the fire. You step outside, boots sinking into muck. War is loud, chaotic, and nauseating, but mostly it's dirty. You close your eyes as thunder rolls overhead because nobody talks about the hygiene of heroes, just their victories. You're in a medieval Swedish fishing village on the edge of the Baltic Sea. Dawn is blue and icy. Gulls circle above nets heavy with herring. You walk along the rocky shore. The beach is littered with fish heads and broken crates. The wind carries their smell inland. The huts are timber, chinked with moss. Inside, smoke curls from central hearths. The air is warm, but smoky and sharp with fish oil. You see racks of drying fish, their silver bodies stiff in the wind. Children chase dogs between the piles of guts. A woman stirs a pot of fish stew, occasionally lifting the spoon to taste. The spoon never leaves her mouth between dips. The floor is strewn with rushes and pine needles. It helps a little. You step into the bathhouse, fired up once a week. Men sweat together, scrub with juniper water. The walls drip with condensation and skin flakes. The water on the floor is dark by the end. It's a kind of ritual purification. It doesn't last. Latrines are simple holes behind sheds. They freeze solid in winter. In spring, they melt. No one likes spring. You watch a man gutting fish, hands crusted in scales. He rubs his eyes with the same fingers. The air is filled with salt, smoke, decay, and seaweed. A priest visits, his robe stained and frayed. He blesses a newborn with fingers still sticky from fish. The church smells faintly of mold and beeswax. It's the cleanest place here, and even it has mice. As night falls, the huts fill with smoke and laughter. The fire crackles, someone farts, no one minds. You stand outside, watching frost form on the nets. Life is hard here, but shared, and it stinks of survival. You close your eyes. The cold wind scrapes your cheeks, because even in the cleanest air, people make things dirty, just by living. You're in a Cistercian abbey in northern England. It's early morning. Frost crusts the stone. The monks move like ghosts in grey habits. The cloister walk is cold, echoing with footsteps. Candles sputter. The scent of wax and damp stone fills your nose. You enter the refectory. Silence reigns. The floor is paved with uneven flagstones. Rushes cover them, sweetened with mint and sage. Underneath, centuries of crumbs fester. The monks eat plain food, bread, beans, cheese. They wash their hands before meals in cold water, no soap. You see lice combs tucked into belts. Humility includes acceptance of vermin. The dormitory smells of wool and sweat. Bedding is straw-stuffed and rarely changed. The latrine is a long room over a stream with stone seats. The running water is clever engineering. But on still days, the smell settles like a blanket. You pass the scriptorium. Monks scratch at parchment, pausing only to cough. Ink-stained fingers carry dirt into every holy page. In the infirmary, a brother stirs herbs into wine. He dips linen rags in it, then wraps a wound. They'll dry the bandage later and reuse it. You see a monk sweeping the chapel floor with a broom made of twigs. Dust floats in the stained glass light. As evening comes, vespers echo through the cold stone. Smoke from peat fires drifts through the corridors. You stand in the cloister garden, smelling wet earth and old wool. Even here, where God is praised hourly, filth still gathers. You close your eyes. The bell tolls softly, because even the devout can't keep their habits clean, not in this world. You're standing in medieval Cairo, the city of 1,000 minarets. Dawn breaks warm and dusty over limestone walls. You walk narrow streets lined with mashrabiya windows that filter the harsh sun. Vendors call in Arabic, offering dates and spiced lamb. The smell is heavenly, until a gust of wind carries something rank from an alley. You follow a water carrier. He hauls a goatskin bag slung across his shoulders. He fills cups for a coin, scooping from a public cistern fed by the Nile. In flood season, the water is brown and filled with silt. It's life-giving, but it's never truly clear. You step into a hammam. The tiled interior gleams under oil lamps. Men scrub each other with soap made from olive oil and lime. They pour buckets of heated water over themselves, sighing in relief. But the bathhouse is crowded. Lice thrive even among the cleanest patrons. Water flows across the floor to a central drain, carrying hair, sweat, and filth with it. Outside, you see a butcher hacking goat carcasses. Blood runs into the gutter, turning dust to sludge. Flies land in black clusters. You walk through the souk al-atarin, the spice market. The air is intoxicating, cinnamon, frankincense, myrrh. Traders dab perfume on their wrists to mask body odor that clings despite bathing. You see barbers scraping heads bald to fight lice. Their razors are wiped on rags between customers. In wealthier houses, servants scrub floors with vinegar and sand. Latrines connect to cesspits under the courtyard. They're emptied at night by labourers who work by torchlight, their faces wrapped in cloth. You peer into an alley where a child urinates against a wall. The ammonia smell lingers, baked into the sun-warmed bricks. You stand at the edge of the city, watching the Nile roll lazily past. The river is sacred, essential, and it carries away the city's waste downstream. Cairo is rich, learned, a hub of traw, aid and scholarship. And it stinks too. You close your eyes. The muezzin's call drifts across the rooftops, melancholy and beautiful, because even here, under the desert sun, cleanliness is fleeting and dirt is forever. You're in medieval Dublin, perched at the edge of the dark, cold Irish Sea. Gulls wheel overhead, screaming as they dive for fish guts tossed onto the rocky shore. You walk through narrow lanes of timber houses daubed in lime. Smoke curls from peat fires, filling the damp air with its sharp, earthy scent. The street underfoot is packed mud, churned with animal dung and kitchen slop. Pigs root freely, grunting as they dig for scraps. You pass a tanner's yard. Hides are soaked in vats of dog dung and urine to soften them. The smell is enough to turn your stomach. Workers stand barefoot in the mixture, stirring with long poles, their faces turned away in grim resignation. You see women drawing water from a communal well. The rope is slick with use. They gossip as they fill buckets, ignoring the oily sheen on the surface after rain carries refuse downhill. You step into an alehouse. The door creaks. Inside is dim and smoky. The floor is strewn with rushes, blackened with old ale and spit. A dog sleeps under a bench. A man scrapes his bowl with a crust of bread, then picks his teeth with the same knife he uses for everything. In the corner, a bard recites a saga to rapt, slightly drunk listeners. His hair is tangled and he scratches absently at his scalp. Outside, a boy tips a chamber pot into the gutter. He doesn't bother shouting a warning. The liquid flows slowly between cobbles toward the Liffey, carrying a bit of the city with it. You follow the riverbank. Ships unload barrels of salt fish. Sailors piss against the quay. Rats scatter when you approach. You pass a small chapel. Inside, the smell of damp stone and old incense is somehow comforting. Worshippers kneel on rush-strewn floors. As dusk falls, the peat smoke thickens. Lamps glow behind grimy panes. People close shutters against the cold and the smell. You stand at a crossroads, watching the fog roll in from the sea. Dublin is hardy, fierce, deeply rooted in old ways, and it's filthy in 100 practical ways. You close your eyes, the wind whipping your cloak, because survival doesn't care about scent, only staying alive. You're in medieval Naples, built on old Greek and Roman bones, looking out over the glittering bay. The sun bakes narrow streets lined with pastel plaster. Laundry flaps overhead like banners. But look down. Gutters run in the centre, black with waste carrying slops out to sea. You see a woman washing clothes in a fountain. The water runs clear from a hill spring, but her soaps are animal tallow and ash. It works, sort of. Nearby, a butcher's stall drips blood onto the stones. A stray dog laps it up, tail wagging. Flies swarm. You step into a church. Inside, coolness reigns. Candles flicker against frescoes of saints. The air is heavy with incense, masking the reek of unwashed bodies pressed close in prayer. Outside, street hawkers sell figs, olives, cheap wine. They shout over each other. One wipes sweat from his face, then handles coins and fruit alike. You see fishermen dragging in nets at the harbour. The catch flops, silver and gasping. They gut them right there, tossing entrails onto the dock to rot in the sun. You enter a tavern. It's dim, cool. Wine sloshes in clay cups. The floor is swept with branches, but the smell of old wine, piss and fish clings. A man plays a lute in the corner. His fingers are grimy, nails black. No one minds. Latrines are small outhouses perched over stone-lined pits. They're emptied at night, the contents carted outside the city, not far enough. Wealthier homes have courtyards with fountains. Water flows, but algae clings to the basins, and servants scrub it only occasionally. As dusk comes, the bay glows red. Voices rise in song. The air cools, but the smell of the day lingers. You stand on a terrace, watching Vesuvius loom in the distance. Naples is vibrant, passionate, stubbornly alive. And it stinks in every corner. You close your eyes. The sea breeze hits your face, because even paradise rots if you look close enough, and no one escapes it. You're in a medieval leper hospital on the outskirts of a French town. It's a low stone building with shuttered windows and a walled garden. You hear bells. The patients carry them to warn passers-by of their approach. Their voices are low, resigned. You step inside. The air is close, heavy with herbs hung from rafters in a desperate attempt to purify it. Rosemary, sage, lavender, all fighting a losing battle. Beds line the walls. Straw mattresses crawl with fleas. Sores are bandaged in old linen, stained and reused. You watch a nurse rinse a wound with wine, wincing at the patient's hiss of pain. She uses the same cloth for the next patient. Latrines are a trench behind the building. They're dug deep but not deep enough. The smell drifts through the garden. The garden itself is tended carefully. Cabbages, onions, healing herbs. The soil is dark, fed with night soil carted from town. The patients weed slowly, carefully, stifling coughs. Inside, the chapel is lit with candles. The smell of melted wax and incense can't quite hide the scent of rotting flesh. A priest preaches mercy. His hands are chapped from washing with lye soap, but he can't avoid the patient's breath. You see a man combing lice from his hair into a candle flame. The heat pops them with a tiny crack. Dinner is thin soup, stale bread. It's served in wooden bowls, never truly clean. No one speaks much. Voices are hoarse. The only sound is the rasp of breath and the shuffle of feet. You step outside at dusk. The bells ring again. No one comes close. This is charity. This is medicine, and it's wretched. You close your eyes. The cold settles on your shoulders, because compassion doesn't smell sweet, but it's all they have. You're in a medieval leper hospital on the outskirts of a French town. It's a low stone building with shuttered windows and a walled garden. You hear bells. The patients carry them to warn P. Assersby of their approach. Their voices are low, resigned. You step inside. The air is close, heavy with herbs hung from rafters in a desperate attempt to purify it. Rosemary, sage, lavender, all fighting a losing battle. Beds line the walls, straw mattresses crawl with fleas. Sores are bandaged in old linen, stained and reused. You watch a nurse rinse a wound with wine, wincing at the patient's hiss of pain. She uses the same cloth for the next patient. Latrines are a trench behind the building. They're dug deep, but not deep enough. The smell drifts through the garden. The garden itself is tended carefully. Cabbages, onions, healing herbs. The soil is dark, fed with night soil carted from town. The patients weed slowly, carefully, stifling coughs. Inside, the chapel is lit with candles. The smell of melted wax and incense can't quite hide the scent of rotting flesh. A priest preaches mercy. His hands are chapped from washing with lye soap, but he can't avoid the patient's breath. You see a man combing lice from his hair into a candle flame. The heat pops them with a tiny crack. Dinner is thin soup, stale bread. It's served in wooden bowls, never truly clean. No one speaks much. Voices are hoarse. The only sound is the rasp of breath and the shuffle of feet. You step outside at dusk. The bells ring again. No one comes close. This is charity. This is medicine, and it's wretched. You close your eyes. The cold settles on your shoulders, because compassion doesn't smell sweet, but it's all they have. You're in medieval Lisbon, perched on hills that tumble into the Tagus River. The sun bakes whitewashed walls, the sea wind carries salt, and the city's smell. You walk along winding lanes lined with azulejo tiles. They're beautiful, but the gutters running down the middle are black with slops. You see water cellars with barrels strapped to mules. The water is drawn from wells, sometimes brackish, always shared. A fish market sprawls under canvas awnings. Sardines glisten in the sun. Guts are scraped into buckets and dumped in the river. You enter a church. Cool shade, candles burning. The priest swings a censer so thick with incense you cough. It's not just piety, it's necessary. You pass a bathhouse. Men scrub with soap made from olive oil and ashes. The water is warm, but reused all day. By evening, it's a human stew. Latrines hang off the backs of houses over the hillside. Waste drops into pits or runs down into gullies. In wealthier houses, courtyards hold cisterns to catch rain. The water tastes of dust and moss. You see women beating laundry in basins. The soap is caustic, cracking their skin. The rinse water goes straight into the street. At night, Torches flicker, the alleys twist in shadows. The smell of the day lingers, trapped by the close walls. You stand at a miradoro watching the river glow under the moon. Lisbon is a port of trade, sailors, saints, and sinners. And it stinks, just like every city. You close your eyes. The wind rattles shutters, because even the breeze can't blow it all away and no one expects it to. You're in medieval Constantinople, the city of emperors, walls towering against the blue of the Bosporus. You walk along the Mese, the grand avenue lined with shops selling silks, spices, icons. The marble paving is cracked in places, darkened with the stains of centuries. Water carriers shoulder heavy amphorae. They fill them from public fountains fed by aqueducts older than memory. You watch them scoop, the water green with algae in places. You pass a public latrine, a domed building with marble seats in a circle. Men sit side by side, chatting. The flush, a gutter below, carrying waste away with trickling water. It works mostly. The smell lingers. A bathhouse looms nearby, its brick dome striped in red and cream. Inside, steam billows. Men lie on hot marble, being scrubbed with rough cloths. Sweat and soap mix run across the floor into channels that stink faintly despite the heat. You see slaves refill the cistern from barrels hauled up steep streets. They wipe their brows with grimy sleeves, backs slick with sweat. In the Forum of Constantine, traders hawk dates, pistachios, wine. One sneezes into his hand, then weighs out almonds. No one flinches. You wander into a church. Candlelight flickers on gold mosaics of saints with calm, unblinking eyes. The air is cool, filled with incense that battles the scent of hundreds of unwashed pilgrims pressing forward to kiss relics. Outside, you watch butchers carve lamb carcasses in alleys. Blood soaks into straw scattered over paving. Cats prowl, tails high. A boy tips a chamber pot into the street. It runs into the gutter that leads downhill toward the sea. You stand on the sea walls at dusk. Gulls wheel and shriek. The golden horn reflects torchlight and filth alike. Constantinople is rich, holy, decadent, unbowed, and layered in a grime that no conquest ever scrapes clean. You close your eyes. The wind off the Bosporus cools your face, because this city's splendor was always built on the back of waste, and everyone here knows it. You're on a medieval pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. Dawn breaks cold over the road winding through Castile. You walk with dozens of others, peasants, nobles, clerics, all sharing the path and their smells. Clothes are rarely washed on the road. Lice pass freely. You see people stopping to pick them from seams. You pause at a roadside inn. The common room is crowded, smoky. Straw on the floor hides old spills and worse. Tankards are wiped with the same rag for everyone. A stew bubbles on the hearth, thick with beans and salt pork. The cook stirs with a blackened ladle. You hear him cough into the pot. Outside, the latrine is a pit ringed with stones. No privacy but the open sky. Pilgrims complain, but they use it anyway. You see a man tending his blistered feet, washing them in a shallow puddle. He grimaces as he rubs them with a filthy rag. At a monastery, monks welcome pilgrims. They serve thin ale, coarse bread. The dormitory is one long room of creaking pallets stuffed with straw. The smell of sweat, mildew, and old wounds hangs thick. A monk offers to comb your hair for lice, humming psalms as he does. He flicks them into a candle flame with calm practice. You step back onto the road, passing shrines where travelers leave tokens. Ragdolls, carvings, rusting coins, prayers for safe travel, for healing. But the journey itself is a health hazard. Dysentery runs through camps. You see a woman bending by the road, groaning. No one offers more than a sympathetic nod. As evening comes, you join others by a fire. The wind blows smoke into your eyes. Someone farts loudly. Laughter breaks the gloom. You lie down on your cloak, feeling every stone. The stars are brilliant overhead. This is piety, sacrifice, hardship, and it smells like humanity stripped bare. You close your eyes. Someone snores nearby, because the road to salvation is long, dirty, and shared by all. You're in a medieval castle in Normandy. Dawn creeps cold through arrow slits. The courtyard is alive with clangs and shouts. You walk across mud churned by horses and boots. A boy scatters straw to soak up the filth. Pigs nose through it anyway. Inside the great hall, rushes cover the floor, sprinkled with rosemary and lavender. It masks the smell of spilled ale, old bones, and dog droppings missed by the scullions. A hound sleeps on the dais. Fleas hop on and off its flanks. Breakfast is served at trestle tables. Trenchers of stale bread hold greasy mutton. Nobles eat with knives wiped on their tunics between cuts. Wine sloshes onto the rushes. No one cleans it until it dries. You see the lady of the castle supervising servants who haul chamber pots to dump into the moat. The moat itself is green, scummy, and attracts clouds of flies. Upstairs in the solar, woolen tapestries hold years of smoke. They're beaten now and then, sending clouds of dust into the air. The bed is a carved marvel, but the mattress is stuffed with straw that crackles when you sit, harbouring lice and the occasional mouse. You see a servant combing a child's hair. She crushes lice with her fingernails. In the kitchen, a cauldron bubbles with rabbit stew. A cook tastes it with the same spoon he stirs with. His apron is stiff with old stains. Outside, a blacksmith works. The air is full of sparks and sweat. The stable reek drifts over every breeze. As night falls, torches hiss. Shadows dance on smoke-darkened walls. You stand in the gatehouse arch. The drawbridge creaks in the wind. The castle is strong, proud, and very nearly unlivable by modern standards. You close your eyes. The wind rattles the banners. Because even lords and ladies live in filth they pretend not to see, and the walls keep enemies out, not the smell. You're in medieval Bruges, jewel of Flanders, canals glinting in the low sun. The city is wealthy, bustling with merchants speaking Flemish, French, English. You walk along cobbled streets. Stately gabled houses lean over narrow alleys. But in the middle of the street, the gutter runs black. You see a woman empty a chamber pot with a quick flick of the wrist. It splashes into the gutter and trickles towards the canal. Bridges arch over water, dark as ink. Ducks paddle through floating cabbage leaves and less savoury scraps. You step into a weaver's shop. Bolts of wool line the walls. The air is heavy with lanolin, sweat, and the faint tang of urine used to set dye. In the market square, stalls sell cheeses. The rinds are furry with mould, but that's part of the flavour. Flies buzz between the wheels. A brewer rolls barrels of ale. The floor is wet with spillage. Rats dart between casks. You pass a barber surgeon's shop. He's pulling a tooth with iron pliers wiped on his apron. Blood drips onto sawdust. In a tavern, men gamble over dice. The floor is layered in old rushes hiding spit, vomit, worse. The landlord sprinkles fresh herbs on top before sweeping them once a month. You watch women beating laundry at a canal edge. Soap foams white, swirling with sludge. Nearby, the dyers work. Vats of indigo and madder bubble. The waste is dumped straight into the canal, turning its strange colours that swirl under stone bridges. As dusk falls, candles glow behind leaded panes. The city is beautiful in the gloom, but the smell doesn't fade. You stand on a quay, watching the water ripple black and silver. Bruges is wealthy, artful, cosmopolitan, and it stinks from gutter to canal. You close your eyes. Church bells toll softly, because prosperity doesn't mean clean, just better perfume. You're in medieval Prague, the heart of Bohemia, hemmed in by forests and the Vltava's cold green water. You cross the Charles Bridge. Statues of saints watch as carts rumble past, leaving trails of manure. The stone is slick from rain and refuse. You wander into Old Town Square. Merchants cry out in German, Czech, Latin, barrels of salted fish, dried mushrooms, honey mead. The air is rich and ripe. A boy sweeps the gutter with a bundle of twigs, pushing slops toward a drain. It clogs on cabbage leaves and bones. You step into a tavern low-beamed and smoky. The floor is packed dirt scattered with rushes. A hound gnaws a bone under a table. Men play dice, spit, argue. The brewer stirs ale in a huge vat with a paddle blackened from years of use. The ale tastes sour, but it's safer than the water. Upstairs in a merchant's house, rush mats cover oak floors. Lice hide in the seams. A servant beats them outside, sending dust and insects flying. Privies are built over cesspits. When full, they're shoveled out at night and carted beyond the city walls. Sometimes the cart tips. No one wants that job. You see a woman scrubbing linens at the river. The water is cold, swift. It looks clean. But upstream, butchers dump offal and tanners rinse hides in the same current. A barber sharpens his razor on a leather strop. He'll cut hair, drain abscesses, pull teeth, all in one visit. As dusk comes, lamps flicker behind wavy glass. The castle glows on the hill. Smoke rises from hundreds of chimneys. The smell of peat, dung, sweat, and roasting pork mingles in the fog. You stand by the river, listening to water slap the bank. Prague is ancient, cultured, stubbornly alive, and no cleaner than anywhere else. You close your eyes. Bells chime across rooftops, because beauty and filth are always neighbours, and they never move out. You're in medieval Granada, last jewel of Al-Andalus, where the Alhambra rises above orange groves and winding whitewashed lanes. You walk the steep streets of the Albaicin. Water trickles in narrow channels beside cobbles, fed by ancient acequias. But this water carries everything. Dishwater, blood from butchers, the rinse from tannery vats. It moves slow in summer heat, buzzing with flies. You step into a hammam, tiled in intricate geometrics. Steam curls from marble pools. Men recline on hot stone. They scrub with olive oil soap, pour buckets over themselves. It's cleaner than most places, but crowded, water's reused, and lice aren't picky about social rank. You see a barber scraping a man's scalp bald to keep them away. His razor is rinsed once between customers. Outside, a spice seller fans away flies from heaps of saffron, cumin. He wipes sweat from his brow with the same hand that weighs your measure. In the market, butchers hang whole lambs from hooks. Blood pools on the stones, streaked away by water that isn't clean. You pause near a fountain. Women fill clay jugs, gossiping. The lip of the spout is green with moss. Latrines in homes drain into cesspits. These are emptied at night by men called aguadores negros. They work by torchlight, splashing filth into barrels and hauling it beyond the walls. You visit a courtyard garden. Fountains bubble. Roses scent the air. But behind the walls, the kitchen waste waits to be hauled away. You walk into the Alhambra itself. Stucco gleams. Calligraphy spells praise to God. The air smells of cedar, incense. But even here, the latrines are small rooms over channels that must be flushed by hand. Servants carry water in buckets, sweating in the sun. As dusk falls, the muezzin's call drifts over rooftops. Torches gutter. Granada is learned, wealthy, beautiful beyond words, and it stinks in quiet corners no one speaks of. You close your eyes. The night wind is warm on your face, because paradise is man-made, and so is the smell. You're on a medieval manorial estate in rural England. Dawn breaks cold and misty over open fields. You walk the village lane, lined with wattle and daub cottages roofed in thatch. Smoke rises in thin columns. You step inside a peasant hut. Packed earth floor, scattered rushes. A hearth in the centre smoulders. The air is close, smoky, warm. The family sleeps on straw pallets. The straw is changed rarely, crawling with fleas. A pig grunts from under the bench. It shares the house. Warmth is precious in winter. You watch the wife pour water into a wooden bowl. She washes her face with it, then the child's. The water is grey with use. Latrines. There's a pit behind the house covered with planks. Sometimes they just use the hedge. The smell is earthy, sharp. You see a man spreading night soil on fields. It's good fertilizer. He wipes his hands on his tunic before eating. In the manor house, things aren't so different. Stone walls, rushes strewn with herbs. But the floor is rarely swept properly. Food scraps, bones and dog dung hide beneath. You watch servants dump chamber pots out a side door. It soaks into the yard. The lord eats from a silver dish but wipes his hands on the dog's fur. In the kitchen, a cauldron bubbles with pottage. Everything goes in. Yesterday's bones, stale ale, new vegetables. The ladle hasn't been scrubbed in weeks. You see scullions picking lice from their hair between chores. Outside, the byre stinks of cows. Manure is shoveled into piles that steam in the chill. As dusk comes, candles flicker. Smoke hangs low under the rafters. You stand at the edge of the fields, watching mists curl over furrows. This is life for most people. Hard, practical, unadorned, and filthy in a way that seeps into the bones. You close your eyes. A rooster crows in the distance because survival doesn't apologize, it just keeps going. You're in medieval Venice, city of canals, stone bridges arching over water black as ink. You stand on the Rialto, watching merchants haggle. Spices, silk, silver. Everything has a price, but so does the smell. The canals are beautiful in morning light, water lapping gently, but they're sewers too. Everything washes here. Chamber pots are emptied directly in. Butcher's blood, tanner's sludge, fish guts, even the bodies of dead animals. You see gondoliers punting tourists. They smile and sing. The water laps against algae slippery walls, hiding its secrets. In a courtyard, a wellhead rises ornate and carved. Water is drawn from underground cisterns fed by rain. It's precious, but turns brackish in summer. You step into a merchant's palazzo, marble floors, tapestries of Eastern patterns. But the latrines are small closets over shafts that need frequent cleaning. Servants haul out the waste at dawn, faces covered. A barber shaves a man's face with a razor wiped on his apron. He lances a boil next, using the same blade. You pass a fish market. Octopus and eels glisten, leaking slime onto boards. Gulls scream overhead. The paving is slick with fish blood and scales. You watch women doing laundry in canal water, beating it with paddles. Soap made of lye cracks their hands. In a tavern, men drink wine from shared cups. The floor is swept with laurel branches that hide spit and spilled drink. As dusk falls, lamps glow in narrow windows. Music drifts across water, but the breeze carries the smell too. You stand on a quay watching the lagoon reflect stars. Venice is rich, cunning, endlessly seductive, and it reeks in every backwater. You close your eyes. Water slaps gently at stone because the price of beauty is always paid, and here it's in filth. You're in medieval Avignon, papal seat, the Rhone flowing sluggishly past stone walls. You walk along cobbled lanes under overhanging houses. Gutters run through the middle, dark with refuse. A maid tosses slops from a second-story window. She shouts a warning. You step aside just in time. You see butchers hacking sides of beef on wooden blocks. Blood runs into the gutter. Dogs lick it up, tails wagging. You step into a church. Incense clouds the air. The floor is swept with fresh rushes. But unwashed bodies crowd pews, praying in murmured Latin. A priest hears confession. His robe is stained, the linen collar yellowed with sweat. In the papal palace, splendor rules. Tapestries hang, silver gleams. But the latrines are narrow closets over cesspits that stink in summer heat. Servants mop with vinegar, but it barely masks the smell. A barber surgeon sets up in the square. He wipes blood from a blade before cutting another patient. He hums a hymn as he works. You watch women washing clothes in the Rhone. The river carries sewage from upstream towns. The water's cool, but it swirls with filth. A tavern beckons. It's dark, low-beamed. The floor is layered in herbs to hide the smell of old wine, vomit. Men pass a jug, each taking a sip. You walk to the city wall at dusk. The sky burns orange. The smell of dung fires, roasting meat, sweat and blood hangs in the still air. Avignon is holy, learned, soaked in ritual, and dirt clings to every stone. You close your eyes. Bells toll vespers, because even the city of popes can't cleanse itself, not really. You're in medieval Mecca during the Hajj. Dawn spills golden over thousands of tents pitched outside the city walls. Pilgrims pray, chant, cook over smoking fires. The air is thick with devotion and human scent. You walk among them. Water sellers shout, offering skins of tepid water. Every drop is precious. Wells are crowded, brackish. You see people washing feet, faces, arms as ritual demands, but dust coats them again as soon as they stand. Latrines are shallow trenches dug hastily. In the heat, they reek. Men cover them with sand, but flies buzz undisturbed. Vendors sell dates, flatbread, stewed goat. Flies cluster on the trays. Hands pass coins, food, back and forth without pause. You enter the holy city. The Kaaba rises black and ancient. Pilgrims circle, murmuring prayers. Sweat glistens on foreheads, trickles down backs. Water is sprinkled to settle dust. It turns the packed earth into clinging mud that holds every footstep's grime. You see a healer stirring herbs into a pot. He sells remedies for stomach pains common to travellers drinking bad water. At night, campfires dot the hillsides. Smoke rises, curling around prayers in every language. You lie on a thin mat, feeling stones under your ribs. The air cools but carries the day's smell with it. This is faith at its most raw, shared, humble, human, and inescapably dirty. You close your eyes. The murmur of thousands reciting verses surrounds you, because devotion doesn't demand comfort, only presence.